Hell yeah. What's up? Take me out. If I like the music too, but then it kind of is a lot when people are trying to talk. Like right now, how does it sound while I'm trying to talk over it? It's a bit much, right? I could turn it down. Let's see. Like, depends on the song too. Like if it's really erratic saxophone, that could be a little headache inducing, but I like this. I like the music too. Hell yeah, Durgon.
Yo,
I don't know
keep
what
the
happened.
music going. That's nice.
Yeah? Okay, okay.
Yeah, nice and chill. I like that.
Yeah, as long as it's like not too loud.
Right. I'm feeling it. Hey, so let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on like the toxicity of this app?
Of the what?
Of this app?
Oh, of this app.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could get into that for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Like my first thought is like I don't know how much of it is to blame on the app and how much is just, human toxicity. But I'd like to hear what you have to say on that. Like what do you think the app induces that's separate from just like, human toxicity?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an aspect of this where like people just the personality of it is really lost on people, that you don't have to be face to face to someone to have a conversation with them, and at that point you're kind of like dehumanizing them, so you can pretty much say whatever you want. And you get people like, or young kids just like completely bashing on people who they would never say shit like that in front of, like in real life. I think
Okay,
that's
yeah,
one,
I definitely
I think
agree.
that's-
I definitely agree.
I think that's one thing. I mean, I feel like I could probably bring up so many where until we run out of battery, bro.
Yeah.
There's just so much here, and I feel like one of the issues that I have, and I feel like it's hard for me to say something about it, is like how close am I to the people that I interact with where I can call them out on their bullshit, and from a place of like holding someone accountable because I care and love them, And I would hope
Versus
that
just
they-
having some like meaningless relationship online that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but like, I mean, like, let's say if like me and you were having a conversation, like it's just me, you, and someone else, yeah.
Yeah.
And like like you present like an argument or like some point that like you have this idea, and I just start bashing on your point, and like like the other person who sees it, this is going on, and like they kind of see the like, hey, like that's kind of fucked up, like what Duragon did, it's a little bit uncalled for. And
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, what's up?
Can I just jump in here? Have you ever heard of the theory of social sorting?
Social sorting, I have not.
Okay, so it's this kind of idea that there is a predication in human beings to hyper-identify or hyper-reject people based on some kind of arbitrary alignment of values.
All right.
So let's take an example. Let's say, like, I believe in God and Christ. Okay?
Do you?
Let's just take it before I answer that to prove my
Because
point.
you
Let's
could
take
use
it.
me as the example if that's the case. Because I'm a
No,
Christian.
no. In general,
okay.
like, let's take.
All right.
Okay, let's say you believe in something.
Okay.
People that also believe in the same thing are prone to be hyper aligned into that view, regardless of what other views you have. So you can see on TikTok certain dynamics occurring where a bunch of people come together with like, let's say, one principal guiding view, like they don't believe in God, but then one of them says, like, I think the Israeli war in Gaza is genocide. And then that becomes like a hyper alignment point for everyone in the group. We are
Right.
psychologically preconditioned to identify a core value which aligns us, and then
Right.
agree with other values that orbit that core identity and hyper align with them. And if we find someone who doesn't agree with a core identity, like, let's say, for the argument, God doesn't exist, then we're preconditioned to find reasons not to agree with them. And it's a well-studied psychological phenomenon in social sorting, in how we bind ourselves together. And I love the quiet jazz in the background, by the way, host. That's
Right.
just beautiful. It's,
Sick. I'm glad you
relaxes
like
me.
it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
It relaxes
I
me.
I feel
But,
like,
like-
it's gonna help us with the conversation so shit doesn't fly off the handlebars.
So that kind of like binding and that hyper alignment and hyper disalignment is something I think I see very commonly on TikTok.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I like the way you put it. That's really cool. I mean, like, look, I'm trying to learn a little bit more and more and more. I'm just trying to learn. I just find things that are like problematic from like the perspective that I have, and trying to see like, okay, what's the right thing to do in this circumstance? Like, and like even like trying to do the right thing from my perspective. Like, I can't expect every single person to hold to the idea of like what I'm gonna say or do is gonna be the right thing to do, quote unquote.
But don't you recognize that your kind of your views and expressions creates a certain alignment in certain groups versus others?
Yeah, and so like, what do we do?
I mean,
in
you
that
must have felt that.
circumstance?
You must have felt that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So what do we do in the circumstance where?
As have I. Like, I am, like, to answer your earlier question, I'm a Christian. I believe in God, I believe in Christ, and I also believe in the utility of the scientific method and all of the beautiful things that it's taught us.
Right.
But I really dislike hyper alignment. I really dislike fundamentalism. I really
Yeah.
dislike someone saying, "Oh, I understand the laws of nature, therefore I can like discount your conception of a higher deity." In the same
Yeah.
breath, I
This
hate
I-
an evangelical that says, I understand the Bible and it's written word for word, and I can discount your conceptions of physical laws and reality. Almost like those two points of view in my mind kind of meet at the limit, and they're almost the same thing. An evangelical saying that God must exist is, in my mind, isomorphic to a atheist and materialist saying God can't exist. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say this idea of hyper alignment. It's interesting to me to align with the core value of non-hyper alignment, because that is the room that I'm finding myself in, right? A room that is relaxed enough to at least recognize hyper alignment as an issue, and then through that the core value is set. It's sort of like this idea that we're willing to engage with opposing opinions, I suppose.
And how would you quantify or define your core values in this sense, along with the jazz?
Rationality, I mean, would be the metric I would use for engaging with someone else, for a core value of whether or not we can like actually articulate. I mean, I could have core values like basics, love for humanity. So even if you're not rational to me, I might still, save you from the depths or something if I had the opportunity. But that's not the same core value that I'm using to like understand whether or not we can actually have a conversation. you know? So like when people are sorting themselves into TikTok, you know, alignment, it's not necessarily for anything else other than conversationally. They don't even see each other most of the time, right? They're just talking. So it's like a conversational sorting hat.
Do you think they're looking for truth in that conversational sorting, or do you think they're looking for agreement?
Interestingly, I do think the majority of people, unless they are truly just like wasting their time, I do think, yeah, majority of people are looking for truth.
I really struggle with that one. I feel like people just really want to get up there and they want to talk, or they want to state their stance and not necessarily like hear what other people have to say. I mean, like I'm generalizing, but I know that's not completely accurate and true. Like I know there's going to be outliers, you know. But I think...
but like you get this thing on TikTok lives where like a kind of nucleus of opinion occurs between the host and a few of the guests. They have the regulars, they bring them up, they all agree, they all hyper align, and then any contrarian opinion becomes extremely, it doesn't become a rational argument of logic, it becomes an assault on the cultural values of the hyper aligned group, which makes and then everyone gets a little bit emotional and get a bit upset, and like all the TikTok bullshit entails from that point.
Yeah, and I mean, a person's search for truth, they could be honestly trying to search for truth, but I think that they could be missing the mark in the sense of, like Daragon's saying about ranting about their own perspective of truth, rather than being willing to, you know, have the adventure of going into the uncertainty realm of someone else's position. It's not always about just asserting your position or critiquing from your position someone else's. It's like really the adventure is in empathy, you know, empathizing with the true opposition, allowing yourself to leap into their assumptions and where they're going to take the story, rather than trying to like harness your own bias in that.
But we have a tendency of human beings to discount the arguments of people that we see outside of our social group in favor of the ones that we see in our social group.
Yeah.
So we have a fundamental issue in trying to intellectually engage with arguments outside of our orbit, our nexus.
I think I used to be like that. I don't necessarily know if I really think that I'm that way very much now. I feel like I'm just really tired all the time. And I just kind of want to like hear and learn. Because I mean, I know that there's a lot of people on this app that are far like more intellectual than I am. And I want to hear from them.
Yeah, but it's not about that, in my opinion. Like, I have a little rule for myself. I try not to talk on TikTok lives more than once every 8 weeks. Yeah. Like, I listen if I'm on a train journey, or if I've got something super boring to do at work. I'm going to put on Tiny's lives, or like some atheist lives. I'm going to listen, and like I try and only engage like a very distinct windows where I'm going to say like, okay, tonight I'm going to like try and engage with the miasma of ideas and try and make my point come across. And I think there is a danger of doing it like all the time, every day, every night, personally.
I think people forget that there's real people, and we do form friendships and connections, Daragon, on this app to people. And I think that we kind of forget that, you know, the people that we hang out with every day, like I chewed somebody out yesterday, pretty intensely actually, and you know, told this individual that, you know, we do have a friendships that we develop on these apps, and we do have some sort of, social duty to one another, especially the people that we talk to every day, to maintain those friendships and look out for our friends just like we would in the real world. And it ended up being a really ugly conversation. It got ugly quick.
Well, I would disagree with you, Chris. I would disagree. Like, on this app, everything is ephemeral. You have like so
Some
many
people don't
different
have friends in the real
diverging.
world, though. Some people do have friends on this app and not in real life, because of COVID and everything made it really hard to maintain friendships for some people. And people need to realize that, or they need to set, boundaries and let it be clear. But when you hang out with someone every day and then you go and you choose some jackass motherfucker over your friends because it's fun or entertaining or what the hell ever, that's absurd to me.
But there is a danger if you hang out with someone every day, you're going to hyper align with their values, even when they say things which you don't actually agree with. And this
I don't think so.
In my opinion, this is the massive danger of TikTok, is this tendency of hyper alignment at the expense of your own critical value thinking.
I don't think so. I think that the group that I hang out with, I think we all, Durgan, would you say we all have pretty diverse opinions? And don't always agree with each other and actually argue with each other quite a bit?
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I fucked up.
Why'd you fuck
I
up?
feel like
Enough love.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I feel like I put myself out there under the impression that everybody on here was real. And I learned that that's not the case, and it's a lesson that I learned. So it's okay.
I don't think that that's a fuck up. I think it's okay to be vulnerable, but it's not your fault when people take advantage of that vulnerability. Just don't allow it to happen with the same person twice.
Yeah, just it's not just.
But there is,
But
sorry, Darga, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there is a tendency on this app, Chris, you have to agree, I believe you have to agree with this, that people that have some kind of connection tend to hyper-align with each other. It's like a locking of magnetic fields. If you're kind of in their orbit a little bit, you then lock in immediately. And anything that they say and anything you say becomes a very intricately designed into your relationship, which is not how humans
I don't think
form.
so. I absolutely do not think so. I'm very, very close to one person on this app, extremely close to them. And them and I do not agree on things sometimes. And, but just like with any friendship, I have their back and we discuss any issues that we have in private.
But it's not.
Wait,
It's very different from a personal interaction.
I was
Like
going to say to
TikTok
this
is very
point,
divorced.
I think that in a lot of ways it has kind of taught me more to how to interact with strangers. So to your point, it is kind of unnatural to break these boundaries of the sorting into absorbing a bit of like. Well, I hesitate to say multiculturalism, but multi-ideologies, like being willing to talk to and engage with a stranger, even though they might have differing opinion than me. So that's what this app has kind of taught me.
But do you engage with them in good faith, or do you engage with them in the context of the TikTok live that you're currently a part of? I see a lot of the latter rather than the former.
Right. So I go out into the real world all the time and engage with strangers in that way as well, like going to public protests or hanging out at public squares and just debating people. And in the same way, wait, let me finish. In the same way.
I can't
Chris,
find any
you might be
for me. I don't.
In the same way, I find this disingenuous interaction in real world situation. Yes, I find it on the app, a lot of disingenuous interaction. When I interact, I'm genuine, right? I act in good faith. But nonetheless, no matter who I interact with, I can't find that in all places. Even in the real world, when I look someone in their eyes, I still come across this tension of like, oh, this person's being disingenuous. And so in that sense, I think that this app has allowed me to sort of hyper test interactions with strangers and be able to draw my own boundaries better, so that in the real world, when I interact with people, I can like more easily pick out who's good faith and who isn't.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that this app has no utility. What I'm saying is there is a danger of hyper alignment due to social sorting, where when you hear someone give a fundamental opinion, be it on like, you know, God, Christ, morality, abortion, Israel, Gaza, whatever it can be. When you find someone give a fundamental opinion that you connect with, there is a danger that all their other opinions you become very susceptible to, because you've hyper aligned with that initial connection.
An echo chamber. You're existing in an echo chamber.
I think that's even more radical in real life. We tend to align with people even more so in real life than on this app, because I can't think of anyone that I see hyper aligned with anybody. I know that everybody has different viewpoints. Like Bear Cub and I, we're really good friends. We do not agree on everything in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
We're not evolved genetically to create society with people who are on the other side of the planet from us. Like, we're designed, the social sorting mechanism allows communities to kind of stick together in kind of a local geographical group. And I think one of the dangers of TikTok is creating this social sorting completely independent of any kind of geographical alignment, and creating this hyper alignment of values at the expense of any other point of view.
You know
I
what's
think it's any more dangerous than it is in person. I actually find it more dangerous in person, to be honest.
You know what's a real big struggle I've had on this app, and it's probably been like that for like maybe 4 years, is that because like the stance that I have on a lot of things and just where I'm coming from is so vastly different from like the two polarities that we see that usually do these debates. If I start a conversation about like, or if a conversation starts with me about my beliefs, there will always be someone who comes in and tells me how I'm wrong about that, and the conversation will turn into like their Christianity or their version of Christianity versus the atheist, or it'll just be like both of them against me now.
And why do you think TikTok is because I'm going to wager, Dargon, that doesn't happen in your life when you go out and meet people, you know, in a bar or like, you know, in a work function, whatever. You say, I'm a Christian. You're not going to have 4 people come upon you and say like, okay, give me the transcendental argument for why God exists, or you're fine-tuning our basis current theoretical physical models. But on this app, there's a kind of an invitation to that dialectic, which in my opinion is based on social sorting.
Right. But I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that I'm a really, really, really weird Christian. And I do kind of keep that private in the real world.
Okay. So do you kind of feel like you on TikTok are kind of challenging this private view of Christianity in a kind of public forum where you can get feedback on it, and something that you don't want to do in your private life? Because
no, people are
before you answer that,
I
I do exactly the same. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I also think that I have a fairly good grasp of fundamental physics and cosmology. And I come on this app to kind of challenge myself. I want to hear someone that gives me a good argument against what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's I have a really weird stance, so it's I guarantee you would probably not think of me as a Christian.
Why?
Because I have a really weird stance. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is fine. I mean, I'll say it to you.
Yeah.
It's just.
Let me just preface my point of view. I don't think anyone who is a true Christian has any right to define some measure of Christianity in other people, one way or another. I think at the core of the religion is a certain degree of acceptance and a certain degree of an understanding of a path to the divine. And that path can manifest itself differently in many different people in many different ways. So I'm a Catholic, and I have been accused on this app more times than I can remember that I'm not a true Christian, because I'm not willing to say that I believe empirically that Jesus rose out of the tomb.
Yeah. I agree with you there on that one, that I don't believe Jesus rose out from a tomb.
So tell me how you view things. Like, what's your, how do you construct a metric or an understanding of the world based on your beliefs? Because for me, that's the most important thing. Is like, how do people create their view?
I think the utility of it is far more important than any of the semantics. I absolutely agree with you on that. If you're not applying this to your life where it's beneficial for yourself, your family, your community, the people you interact with, then what's kind of the point of it? I agree with you there.
So if I were to pin you down in a friendly way and say, okay, what supernatural theological claims of the Christian faith would you subscribe to? What would you say to me?
I would say none.
That's a very rational argument. If I were to rephrase the question and say, like, if you somehow had access to the Old Testament and the New Testament and the only copy, and you could just take it away and burn it in a ditch at the side of the road, would you choose to take away those messages from humanity?
No.
And I would agree with you on that. Also, there is a social utility in what the Bible communicates. That social utility was developed over generations and centuries to create a view that we now interpret as the Bible. But if you go down and break it down, it's so contradictory, it's so confusing. My username is chosen very specifically because I love the book of Ecclesiastes, because it's practically an agnostic atheist book saying, what's the point in believing in God? And I love the fact that there is a religion out there which acknowledges its own fallibility and allows the question of faith to be something completely personal and not something objective.
Right. I like that.
Yeah, I really like that.
Well, it doesn't sound like I'm getting an argument with someone about how I believe the fine-tuning of the physical constants led to the physical world. But that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm joking.
So I'm.
You go ahead,
No,
Derek.
go
You
ahead.
I got lots I can say.
It's okay. Go ahead. I have a lot I want to hear.
Well, I guess to that point, I find myself gravitating towards this app to practice listening and to try and practice hearing out other points of view and seeing my own emotional stability through that
I get that.
test. So, like, Yeah, so like it does bring me closer to my loved ones, because when I get in an engagement with them, it seems like almost nothing compared to the inflated arguments on this app. So it kind of like puts things to an equilibrium, but I know that not most people probably aren't utilizing this app for that reason, and there are definitely a lot of things that you said that I agree with, aligned with the toxicity of it. But I guess to our all, I do believe that like the power of a tool wields both, harm and justice, right? We could, and like a person. So yeah, in the same way, like the internet exposes us to these echo chambers and could allow someone to never escape a biased, dogmatic viewpoint. It does also, gift the opportunity for someone to escape their dogma and educate themselves and question their own, bias, like you're saying. And so to that degree, I think, ultimately the message, when I hear the word Christianity, I see it as a message of one of education and science and rationality. It's not one of dogma. I think that the Judeo-Christian culture led us to the scientific method.
Agreed.
And this method of questioning ourselves, is just it's just being integrated into the scientific
Exactly. A lot
method.
of the early scientists, what we would call scientists, were trying to confirm the claims of the faith, and then they found different results. Okay, and then some of them were persecuted for it, some of them were ignored, and they had to go through this kind of period of integration, and us as a society has to integrate modern science into archaic belief. And it's of course there's 1,000 things you can point to in the Bible which are shit and archaic relics of the time, but my point would be to that is just read it and allow the Bible to tell you how confused it is, like how unsure it is that God exists. And there are huge parts of the book which are basically repeating the classic TikTok atheist theist live argument, and I find it hilarious. And the reason I kind of brought this back into the social sorting is that there's this hyper alignment of an atheist worldview and a theist worldview, and the two shall never integrate or never take anything to one another. You have to be one or the other. And I hate this tendency on TikTok to get hyper aligned into a worldview.
That's the biggest lie. Yeah, that is the biggest lie of all, that those two things are in tension with one another.
So
That's
I think
total lie.
fortunate for you that you got to meet me today, because I kind of identify as a agnostic Christian who's a mythicist and a hard determinist.
Well, let's talk about that, because like for me that's fascinating. Like I'm always trying to reconcile in a intuitive way what I read in the books in scripture, but I really hate using that word, but let's say what I read in scripture and what I understand with physics.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's like a binary choice. Some people on this app would say that either you believe in science or you believe in the Bible. If you believe in the Bible, you know nothing about science. And if you believe in science, then you discount everything the Bible says. And I just don't think that's true. It's not that simple.
I'm a carpenter by trade, but I studied as a mechanical engineer. That's what my degree's in. So, I've had to take my fair share of classes on physics and chemistry and mathematics.
So where do you shake out? Like, if you're gonna shake the doggone tree of belief, what's gonna fall to the earth?
I don't know what that means.
I mean, so in sense that we all have this kind of hierarchy of belief of certain transcendental things and certain faith claims, and if you kind of take all of that and just shake it, what falls down as kind of core values, things that you won't give up.
I think even if like things got proven to me where my faith would fall, I think the ideas behind the values that I hold now, because of what I learned through that, I don't think I would get rid of, because they have been extremely beneficial for me in my life and people around me. And I think that's one of the things that really led me to truth, regardless of whether the information that I got it through was true or not. I think ultimately I was presented with truth, and life just kind of showed me that it was. Like the ability to empathize with other people, to say that I'm so sorry, like my throat and my nose is all stuffed up, so I sound like a...
Don't apologize.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I sound like a dog that's about to peel over. But it's the idea that, you know, if something...
We're losing you, Duragon. You're cutting out, but it's hilarious to hear the elevator music in the background as you cut out.
Cutting out again. Hold on, let me... that should work.
I get what I get what you're saying. I really do understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to put into words, and it's kind of hard to justify, especially.
I don't think I'm having a hard time explaining it, or I think it was just like my connection might have been bad, but
okay.
It's the idea that, like,
Thank you.
if there's a being that was greater than us, that found value in us to like give themselves up like as a sacrifice for us.
There's
like,
beauty in that, in the cyclical nature of that idea, in my opinion. Yeah. And like I said, I think I can go pound to pound with someone over the fine-tuning argument. I think there are very strong indications in modern physics that there are certain aspects of our naturalistic view of the universe which are extremely hard to explain from a theoretical viewpoint, and you kind of have to either believe in a future theory that will explain everything, which for me is indistinguishable from a belief in God, or to believe in some kind of theistic influence over the world.
Yeah. I mean, the deterministic aspect of me can't move past the fact that like we don't choose our beliefs. I think I have at least I feel like it's a grounded understanding of that.
Is there a specific argument why you believe the universe is deterministic?
I don't think we've seen anything that would show us it's not. Even like, let's say with things that are smaller than like classical physics, I think there's an aspect of it that seems undeterministic, but the reality is we just don't know. And even if, like, let's say I were to grant that there's some kind of randomness there, this still puts us into the physicality of like classical physics, where we can't break out of causality.
I hear that. My problem is this word creativity, I suppose. I can hear the deterministic argument for creativity, but I sympathize with it, but not fully, because creativity doesn't seem random. It seems intentional, and it also doesn't seem determined. Like, for instance, this might be a really bad example, but like, how could it be in any way determined which grind I choose to do on my skateboard?
Well, can you do the grind that you don't know how to do?
Well, that's much of skateboarding. It's like this what I don't want to derail. What did you mean? What do you? I kind of know what I mean by that. Like, no, until I learn the trick. I'm so. You're saying there's this, but like, you're not fully getting you're not fully getting it, because once I master a certain grind, the goal of skateboarding or BMX is to take that grind to a whole new location and do it on a new spot, a new rail or a new ledge that no one's really done it on before, or a whole new trick. Literally come up with a new
Logic Troll, what you're showing me right now is the reasons why you do what you do, and you can't do things outside of reason.
Well, I mean, I suppose some people would say it's unreasonable, but I like how you're steel manning it. Like, yeah, I'm using my rationality to pre-plan and execute a maneuver or a trick, but in the way that it's predetermined, or like, because I think of predetermined things or like as like sort of this idea in physics, right? Where if I throw a ball off a roof, it's bound to hit the ground. But I can't really map out the complex, like, maybe it's not due to the purely complexity, but the complex like causes leading up to me deciding to, like, you know, make an art piece or like paint a portrait in a new way that's never been done before.
Or even
because
when
to
you
realize
throw the
that
ball off the building, like,
go
where
ahead.
precisely is it going to hit the ground? I mean, that knowledge is fundamentally indeterminate.
Yeah, down to like an atomic structure, or like down to like, you could draw a circle with chalk and be like, the ball's gonna land roughly between here, but actually determining, like, when you want this level of preciseness. I think we get to an arbitrary level.
Something which I worked out the other day that I found mind-blowing. Just 1 second, okay? Especially when it comes to this level of precision, okay? So I worked out, like, if you take the radius of the observable universe, and if you said, like, okay, with 2 pi r, with the basic equation of the circumference of a circle, given the radius of the universe, how many digits of pi do you need to calculate the radius to an accuracy down to the Planck length, where beyond the Planck length, the notion of distance kind of fails and disappears? Can anyone make a guess of how many digits of pi you need to create that accuracy on the circumference of the observable universe accurate to the Planck length? And no Googling.
Right. What would you say, Dagon? I would say there is no way, right? Because it's an irrational number and it goes on forever, and to get accuracy,
how many digits of that number do you need to enforce the accuracy I'm saying? Like, how many digits of pi do you need to calculate that circumference to an error level less than the Planck length?
What's the Planck
It's like
length?
A fundamental measure of distance where it's like 10 to the minus 23, I think.
Basically, it's the smallest unit of measure.
Okay.
And anything below that doesn't make sense to say distance exists. So take the biggest thing we can see and measure it to the accuracy of the smallest thing we understand. How many digits of pi do you think we need to do that?
I think that was actually a pretty easy question to answer. I think it would be the infinite.
No, it's 62. 62 digits of pi.
Really?
62. I was absolutely astounded at how few digits you needed. It's not... Okay, so if the universe expands to an infinite radius, of course, you would need an infinite... you would need the irrationality of pi to get you to the right answer. But based today, how big do we see the universe versus how small is the Planck length? You only need 62 digits of pi to calculate to any meaningful sense how big, how resolution you can make that equation work, which is, I think, a wonderful argument and a wonderful source of debate about, okay, why is pi infinite? In the case in our universe, we only need 62 of the digits to measure the biggest thing against the smallest resolution.
When will we need the 65th?
If the universe got a bit bigger.
Well, pi. It's because pi is trying to compare not just right. It's not using a real geometric resolution. It's just trying to compare the curve of a circle or the radius of a circle to its. Yeah. That's right. And so the irrationality comes down to trying to compare a straight line to a round edge, right? A curve. We can never use a straight line to perfectly measure a curve abstractly. And so that's why it creates this
Isn't it amazing
irrational
that we can create this concept of an irrational number that you can compute its digits down to infinity, but you only actually need 62 of them to make sense of the biggest thing versus the smallest thing that we understand. I think that's beautiful.
Yes, absolutely fascinating.
I have a quick question for you, Cole.
Yeah.
By the biggest thing, are you talking about the universe itself or the observable universe?
Observable.
Okay.
And energy is not conserved at large scales. FYI, wild jester.
Hey, Bear Cup, can you come up or no? So I got this really, really weird idea the other day that I think God might have unalived.
The music and just at the perfect moment. I'm sorry, I just had to point that out.
Yeah, I know, right? Tell me about it.
Like permanently or just like one time?
No, I think it was like when you unalive, it's for real. And what leads me to think that there's things outside of God, like things greater than God, is the fact that Jesus would be able to be risen by God. Like, it's like everything just kind of came together in this really, really weird way. It's like I'm still trying to wrap my head around like the ideas I'm kind of processing. But so I think that the sacrifice that Jesus made was made in heaven. I don't think this was on earth. That's for I mean, most of the other people in here do know like my stance on this, but I think that when Jesus sacrificed himself, it was not under the impression that he thought he was going to be coming back. So for him to come back, it was something that God did. And I think that could have potentially cost God God's being. I think this is one of the reasons why I don't think I really necessarily see like God's hand in any of the things that happen within the universe. And it's kind of weird, like, it starts kind of pulling me into this idea of like turtles all the way down theory, where there are things going to be bigger and greater than God. This is where you go, oh yeah, he's definitely not a Christian. Sorry.
So, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, what would be greater than God?
Whatever would have been in God's time space.
Okay, I see.
Or outside of, or even outside of God's time space.
Wait, I would answer that. The thing that would be greater than God would be the opportunity for God to fail. So basically us.
Wait.
Opportunity for God to fail, which is basically us.
You know, I used to think that God did fail. I used to kind of hold to that idea for a little bit. Well, I wouldn't say a little bit. I feel like it was not necessarily fail, but it was more like we weren't important enough for God to care, for him to waste his time with us. But I feel like the concept of God being able to unalive for Jesus to be able to live It makes a little bit more sense.
So
Well, I think it's kind of. Sorry, my phone decided to start updating right now. That was perfect timing.
So, wait, does God have like a temporal state, like us?
What do you mean?
Like he experiences time.
God would experience time differently than us.
But he would still have like time existing in his dimension.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the time space that we observe or experience.
Okay.
Like, it would be a linear time from God's perspective. It would not look anything like what it does for us.
Okay.
I think for me, like, the question comes down to is, are the rules of logic a priori to God or a function of God? And you get into a classic battle, and with no resolution. You can only get a stalemate, because if the rules of logic are a priori to God, then he's constrained in some way. If God is not subject to the rules of logic, then how can we meaningfully describe any properties that that entity has without relying on logical construction?
Well, the answer
And I'm not saying this is a cop-out.
Right.
I'm saying this is a point of discussion.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that the laws of logic would apply in the same sense to us as it does within our time space.
But then it becomes really hard to discuss any kind of notion of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without relying
100%. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah. I feel
That's
like
the point of the allegories and symbolism, because how can you talk about an infinite thing from a finite perspective without sounding ludicrous?
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that you can't reach for it or point to it. And I think that religion does a fantastic job of giving us all of those allegories and myths and symbolisms to do that. We just have to be generous with the concepts. I was just going to say, I'm kind of a complete heretic in this way. I was curious what Durgan wanted to ask me, because I'm at work right now. I'm on lunch, because I'm probably outside of all of you's views, including Durgan's. I'm like extremely weird.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to run this, like, at least tell you about, like, where I'm kind of at, like, with this whole weird idea of, like, I used to hold to this idea that, like, this universe was this piece of art that God made and threw in the closet and forgot about as a kid. And it just kind of did its own thing in the closet. But, like, now that I'm, like, starting to, like, really trying to process the stuff of, like, what the sacrifice looks like from Paul's perspective and mine in heaven, I think there was a price that had to be paid for Jesus to be able to come back, and I think that could have been God.
Have you ever seen one of those? It's a computer program that's like a XY axis with grids on it, and they drop a little bit of energy into it, and it like turns on and off and turns into this pattern that goes out. Have you ever seen those?
No.
I'm lost.
So I'm trying to make an analogy and a visualization here that I've been playing with that's been helping me with questions like that. And I was trying to say it to Robbie the other day, because I was asking him about entropy and time radiating outwards instead of forward and back like we experience it. But there's this game that they have that's like an empty space full of possible directions, and they put a thing in there, and when that thing's on, it has rules that if it's next to another thing, it either devours it or makes another one or something like that. And it, like, if they do it a certain way, it like goes out in an unpredictable way and makes this different shape every time. And sometimes it gets stuck in like infinite little loops where there's these little star patterns happening that repeat over and over again. Or there's these chains that...
Is this something like the Mandelbrot set?
It may react on that. I don't know for sure. I don't know enough about it. I just have a visual of it. And I've been playing with the idea from a Christian perspective, like you're talking about, that what if God was a little bit less easy to define than we're saying? And it's not like a a disembodied mind or a dude sitting on a chair or somebody that's in another dimension, but maybe it's just that all things can be that gave this existence its potential. And then we come in with will.
Platonic.
Yeah, and we drop our will into it, and from that we have our own permutations, our own perturbations of the field, so to speak, that interact with each other, and we create these waves and these designs and these patterns as we go. And then when we're done, we absorb back into the energy, and that energy cycles through again. We become worms and birds, etc. Like, why is that bad?
Can I ask you a question? Like,
sure.
Do you think humans discover or invent mathematics?
Both.
Okay, how? How both?
Mathematics, from the way that we invent, I think, is more of the language and how we apply it. Discover is the phenomenon of things that can be referred to in that way. But when you take away the reference point of the description, which is what I was trying to get to with where I was going with my example, I think it changes how we interact with it. Not necessarily that the matter itself changes, but the idea of what the matter is changes. So we often say like 1 + 1 = 2. But that's because we already have a reference point for what 1 and 2 are. If they have different values and we don't think of them that way, 1 + 1 can equal 1, or something else we call it.
Yeah, so exactly. So do you think in an empty universe, like a universe devoid of matter, minds, anything, do you think the concept of 1 + 1 = 2, or the hypotenuse of the unit triangle is the square root of -2, do you think that notion is true in the empty? No. So you think it is a product? You think it's a product of the mind?
I think it needs things to be a thing. Like you have to have something to be a one.
I think it would be descriptive of these things, and we would be able to draw out parallels to be able to make the comparison and see how that applies to the logical understanding of like these concepts.
Now, but how would you justify?
For Durgon, real quick, because I got to hurry. I got to get back to work here in about 10 minutes. I started playing with that idea, Durgon, and then I thought, what if there is like the block theory of existence, where all that could be is already? And so in a sense, it's determined like you want to see it, but it's not determined from the point of the perspective. So everything that ever could happen has happened. You always say, could you do the other thing? I say yes, and you did it. And every other thing you possibly could have done, but this is what you chose to perceive because you were allowed to perceive choice. Because whatever gave you the creative spark of inspiration of whatever we want to call it, being human, having the ability to perceive choice, allowed you to perceive a, quote, pathway, even though there is no pathway, all is now, through that eternal nature.
Okay. So, it's crazy. It's crazy that you said that. So, I guess, going back to the thing that I was talking about, like the whole, like, God unaliving and for Jesus and all that stuff, I feel like this is the point where I can actually say that the concept of any kind of free will would be coming from this. Like, I can't, I'm gonna have a hard time really explaining this, but like, it's a fresh idea in my mind that I'm trying to put together. But
no, that's what I said. I hold to both. I believe that it is determined because everything that could ever happen is. And it's also free because from the perspective of a finite temporal being, which time is illusory, it's like a filter you put over everything. We're allowed to inject our energy and have within a set of possibilities that we're surrounded by. You know, you only have so much. We can move our path that direction, but there's a caveat of that randomness if we're able to allow it. And I think that's where concepts like Jesus come in.
Can I know you got to go, Bear Cub. Can I jump in? Like, I would love to bring up an analogy for your thoughts. Like, imagine a guy addicted to gambling. And this is a famous example from Pascal back in the day. Imagine a guy addicted to gambling, and say, like, to that guy, you know what? Whatever you do, I'm going to guarantee your winnings at the casino. Whatever you gamble, you're going to win, and I'm going to pay you out the money. Would the guy be happy with that arrangement? would the addicted gambler be happy with the arrangement where I said, no matter what?
Like, obviously, yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
I would say no.
No, I don't think he would be. By the same logic, like saying, like, okay, whatever he gambles, he knows he's going to lose. The gambling addict doesn't go down to the casino in order to gamble because he wants to make money. He wants the thrill. And I believe religion plays the same role in our psyche as this gambling analogy. That if we knew that it would be life eternal at the end of our lives and there was nothing to strive for, we would lose meaning. Just like the gambler isn't gambling to win money, they're gambling for the thrill and the excitement of the process. And I think that is very deeply rooted in humans.
I think a better analogy of this would be like, because I came up with this analogy like a couple of days ago, I'm not even kidding, was that if we were to sit down to a game of chess and I were to tell you every single move that's going to take place, and then at the end of the game you are going to win, you know, would you still play this game?
Yeah.
It's kind of that idea.
And by the same token, if I could tell you that every move you make you're going to lose, are you going to play?
People do that all the time.
The scenario
People actually specifically play games to lose.
Yeah, but it's not even it's not the fact that like somebody wins or loses Bear Cup. It's Jesus Christ, Chris. I love you too. But it's not what yeah, it's not the fact that like someone's gonna win or lose. It's the fact that every single one of these things that's gonna take place, every action that we're gonna take in this game, we already know what it is. We know exactly how it's gonna play out.
But it's gonna have it. The gambler gets addicted because it has indeterminate outcome. He could become very rich or he could lose everything. That is the addiction. If you tell the gambler you're going to win every time you gamble, and I will give you all the money that you ever gamble, he's not going to go down to the casino. It's not going to have the same appeal because he's not doing it to win the monetary reward. He's doing it to pit his existence against the universe. And in a very real sense, religion gives that same satisfaction to people.
See, I think there's two possible missteps there. One is in assuming that we could understand the mind of somebody in that hypothetical that was only driven by the chase. We're assuming we know what it is to be addicted to gambling and how that person would react. But then also we're saying that's what people who hold religious views are doing in the same capacity. And I don't think we can make those jumps at the same time without some messy fallout.
Why not? I think
it's not a one-to-one correlation. It's different.
I think the first logical implication is quite clear in terms of gambling, that the allure is not based on outcome; it's based on the chase, because people get horrifically addicted with no logical reason to think that they're going to win any money, but they're addicted to the idea that they will win money.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're assuming that. I think it's just like when we assume how a person who's addicted to something else could just quit, or what they're actually doing it for. Like, we make a lot of assumptions in that regard, and I think it's a little hard to suss out all of that. Just like I don't agree with people who think our choices are all determined because of something that happened in our past. I just don't agree with that. I think it's much more multifaceted than that.
But how would you explain the prevalence of gambling addiction?
Well, with gambling, like to Steel Man Bear Club's point, I think it's like almost a definitional problem. At the risk of sounding like a gambler, like I think what you kind of have to get pretty particular about like what gambling addiction would actually be, because I don't know if it, to a degree, I don't know if it exists.
Okay. So okay, hold on. So when it comes to addictions in general, it's more of the fact of some type of pattern a person fall into to fulfill some type of impulse to their own detriment. So an example of that would...
But that's based on outcome again. That's based on outcome. Like, now you're saying the pro poker player who wins is not an addict, but the one who loses is.
But to refine it a little more, is the gambler looking to win, Or is the gambling addict looking to play the game, regardless of whether they win or not?
Different for every person. Somebody might be addicted to the casino itself. Somebody might be addicted to, various reasons. Like I said, we're generalizing, and then we're putting that on top of people who are in a completely different set with.
It was an analogy. I grant you that.
Right.
So
so you're saying that if they want to win, then they're addicted, rather than just want to play the game?
I'm saying that if you take someone who's addicted to gambling and you say, I will guarantee you a win on every game that you play from now to the future, they would not take that deal because it's taking something fundamental away from why they're doing it and why they're addicted. They're not doing it because they want to earn the money. They're doing it because they want to engage with the uncertainty.
The thing
That's
is,
my thesis.
when it comes to addictions, it's always fundamental to a dopamine rush. So in this case, with Coldith's point, if you have a gambling addiction, it's not going to be limited to a casino, but it's going to be limited to anything that has risk involved.
And usually we find a way to transmute when something's taken away. And so that's what I'm saying. I think it's an easy jump.
What is the greatest risk in terms of our lives? Not believing in God. And forsaking an eternal life. It's like the ultimate gambler dream of like.
I gave that one up pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't jumped off any cliffs in squirrel suits yet, but I've given up my faith in that religion a long time ago.
That's my point. Let's try and equate the psychology of the. I'm not saying the dude exists, but let's say the most stereotypical gambler addict you can imagine, wanting to play the game. And you said to him, like, whatever you do, I'll underwrite your winnings and you make all the money you ever want. He wouldn't be interested. And religion.
That's essentially religion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what religion is. It gives them that promise and they all choose it. So how does that make sense if they're addicts?
It's the ultimate gamble.
No, I'm saying they're taking the free ride to heaven. They're taking the you win every time option you said they wouldn't take.
No, they're playing a game where they don't know they will never know the outcome. Because you don't know until you die whether you go to heaven or hell. It's the ultimate gambler's game.
But in your analogy, if they believe what they're being given through religion, then that's the option of you will win no matter what.
Hey, Chris, can you let other people speak?
Exactly.
Right, Chris is down there just yapping and yapping.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You hit the nail on the head. I think that's a super interesting characteristic of religion that speaks to something which is in all of us.
Also, this is a bit of a sidebar, but when it comes to like the outcome of detriment, it's not just limited to the personal individual, but it's also how it affects social behaviors. For example, a person with a gambling addiction can definitely steal money from their family in order to waste it on gambling. So and it ruin their loved ones' lives. So like, it's not just on the personal individual. Just a side note.
Yeah, sure. I'll grant you that. Yeah. Just like religious belief can be like, if you don't believe I'm going to the same place, then you're going to go to hell and fuck you, which is fairly common in evangelicalism. There's not too much difference, in my opinion.
So is a poker pro or a stock trader an addict? And is it to the degree that they're successful that makes them an addict, or what makes them an addict?
So
they're a functioning addict.
It's okay.
What I'm trying to say, in my opinion, 1 second, is that we all have this instinct. We all have this instinct to play a game where we don't know the outcome, and we're all attracted to that game one way or another. Some of us get super addicted to gambling. Some of us have never gambled a dollar in their life, but we all have this instinct to gamble the future versus the present. And I think that's an anthropological fact. And I think that's one of the explanations or one of the guiding principles of what religion means to us as a society. But I'm willing to be proved wrong.
And
yeah, I don't know if I I disagree or agree, but I would say in my experience, people are very risk averse, and like being, adopting that unknown is usually, most people like security, and they cling to, even if they're wrong, that they want that certainty. I feel like a gambling addict, quote unquote, is kind of suffering from that same certainty. It's like they know the odds, they know the probabilities, and as long as they're operating within that game, they feel secure and safe. Whereas going out into the real world and turning the screen off makes them feel very insecure and unsafe and irritable. And this is the mark of like a gambling addict. It's their socializability. It's not whether they're successful or whether they win the game or not. It's about how much they laugh off their losses. And so I think to that degree, being more of a gambler and being more risk tolerant is actually usually more emotionally stabilizing, and where I find robust thinking. If you're risk averse, that's usually where I find timid thinking and, people who are kind of insecure in themselves and also very irritable and able to trigger. And so like, I don't know whether or not people are addicted to games of uncertainty. I feel like people are more addicted to at least fooling themselves into thinking that they're certain, and often the opportunity cost of clinging to some kind of security in the end puts them at greater risk than they're even aware of. Right? It's a vulnerable exploitation of their risk. I don't know.
Risk reward ratio.
Illiteracy.
Risk
Okay.
Yeah,
reward
and their
ratio.
illiteracy.
So you said, okay, Troll, you've said a couple things. Here's the deal, right? Being too risk adverse is just as detrimental as being too risky, right? And then when it comes to gambling addiction, right? All addictions all have a same fundamental property, and that is a person with all fundamental property based on dopamine, right? So when it comes to gambling, it is that rush they're looking for, right? And that risk they're looking for. But the problem is, it's not just the outcome of the money, it's also if they waste that money by borrowing it from other people or lying to people or taking advantage of other people's wealth, taking that and risking that as well. So
That's the
it's not,
second order effect.
yeah. But that still would fall under gambling addiction, even if they were successful. Is my point.
How does this relate to
And
God?
Yes, thank you.
I will tell you how it relates to God. Because just like if you tell the gambler, you will get the optimal amount of money from every gamble you make. You go down to Vegas and you run the roulette wheel, and I will guarantee you that every time you will win, and I will pay you the money. The gambling addicts will not be attracted to that situation. No one will be attracted to that situation because the allure of going down to Vegas and putting everything on black or on thirds is that you can win it big. And the connection to religion is you can make a similar argument of why people believe in religion, because it's the ultimate gamble. It's the ultimate thing you will never know about until you're dead. And then if you're on the right side of the gamble or the wrong side, you will either be eternal bliss or eternal damnation. For me, it sounds like a pure gambling trade.
So you believe that people are attracted to religion because of Pascal's wager in reverse? That
Not
perhaps
not quite like that. I think people are attracted to religion because we need the ultimate unsolvable game with the ultimate prize and punishment at the end of it. And I think humans are very attracted to that dynamic, just like gamblers.
So if that's the case, number one, it assumes a very specific type of theological premise, that there's something to lose.
Correct.
As opposed to gain, which is not the case when we're talking about, let's say, Hinduism or Buddhism. There isn't anything that is an eternal loss. So that's one thing. And the other is, sure, it's possible that some would see it that way, but the majority are certainly motivated by the fear of what it is that they would lose if they don't choose. And still others are not making a choice based on anything in regards to the outcome, but on everything that has to do with the present.
But that's my thesis to you. They're not motivated by the fear. They're motivated by the gamble. Just like Pascal's gambler.
I believe that is accurate in some degree, but I would definitely not say that would be the majority, but the minority.
Do you guys know what Pascal's law is?
Yes.
No, what's Pascal's law?
So Pascal's law is that pressure inside of a closed container will apply the pressure in all directions equally.
Right. It's a physics term.
It's the reason why I said that is because most people, and like, I mean, this is not the case because I feel like I'm talking to people who are fairly well educated, far greater than me maybe. But anytime anyone brings up like the whole Pascal's wager, everyone is quick to jump on and say, "Oh, that's Pascal's wager there. That's what it is." And it's like, but I don't think anybody really knows who Blaise Pascal was, as far as
mathematician, brilliant
philosopher, scientist, theologian. Yeah. So I think it's kind of cool to maybe just throw that out there real quick for.
And I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the Pascal that I'm quoting in this gambling analogy is a completely different Pascal.
No,
really?
No, same
I
one.
would think not.
No, it's still Blaise Pascal, but
I could be
Same
wrong.
one.
I could be wrong. I haven't dug out the sources, so
yeah, it's the same dude. But I think it's like religion is one thing for sure, but spirituality is quite different, and I don't see the same analogy applying to those who are spiritually inclined.
I disagree with you that religion and spirituality can be disconnected as easily as you just stated.
Hey, Bear Cup, can you come back for 1 minute?
Why is that?
Yeah, I'm curious to understand that deeper.
It seems like a logical fallacy to me.
Why?
Bear Cup, can you come back really quick?
Wait,
Just sorry.
I kind of want to make this point. I kind of want to make this point real quickly. It's like all or most forms of religion is spiritual, but not all spirituality is religion.
That's a fair point.
Spirituality.
That's a fair point.
Is that what you said?
Wait, what do you think I said?
I didn't quite hear it all the way. Can you repeat it?
Oh, okay. I said most, if not all, religions are spirituality, but not all spirituality is religion.
Okay, how would you define spirituality?
A metaphysical concept a person decides to uphold, which then make principles around that concept.
So I would reverse it and say that it would be the metaphysical principles that would provide a variety of different perceptions and concepts that one could live by. Whereas religion is not so much predicated on spiritual principles, in fact, rarely spiritual principles, but primarily metaphysical narratives.
Run me
I'm
down.
gonna have to disagree with you on that. Sorry.
Run me down the
I'm sorry, I'm
spiritual
not going to allow you
principles.
to disagree. That's fine. Go ahead.
Run me down the spiritual principles, and you're echoing.
I'm not sure I can stop the echo, but the spiritual principle would be foundation of being, the principle of what being is, the principle of, for example, like mind, the principle of vibration, the principle of correspondence, the principle of cause and effect. These are principles, spiritual, that apply. Whereas there's a distinction that Christianity, for example, doesn't present any type of spiritual principles whatsoever. What it does provide are spirit or metaphysical narratives, metaphysical imperatives. One should, one must, because fill in blank with narrative. But there are no principles, and there is nothing in regards to spiritual explanation. The Bible doesn't ever describe a soul. What is it? It doesn't speak of what is free will.
Placide soul. Are you restricting your comments to the New Testament, or can we go into bat over the Old Testament?
Well, the Old Testament would be even better.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you vehemently. I think there is a strong concept inside Exodus over the utility of ritual purity and its effect on the group.
How would that correspond to spiritual principles?
Because there's an inherent recognition within the Exodus laws that the behavior of the individual can somehow affect the outcome of the group.
Yes, as I said, that would correspond with spiritual imperative, that if this, then that, or one must or should. These are spiritual modalities and spiritual norms that are based upon narrative.
I don't think it's a modality, because there is no recognition in the Pentateuch that ritual impurity is a sin. It's just a fact of life. People
it certainly is. It certainly is that spiritual impurity isn't sin simply because it is in direct conflict with the dictate of what is.
Absolutely not. I'm going to disagree with you very vehemently. Like in Exodus and in the Pentateuch, ritual impurity is no way associated with sin. People have to touch dead bodies in order to harvest a cattle. Women have their menstruation period to be women. There is no concept in the Pentateuch that these affectations of humanities are sins. They are just ritual impurities. They are just something.
Yes,
they are just something that needs to be cleansed.
Themselves are not. Those things in and of themselves, no. I mean, the dictation as to how one or the group should be conducting themselves in regards to such things. Swine is also not a sin in and of itself, nor shellfish.
Okay. No, this is a super important point. Okay. So what does the book say in regard to communal behavior over these issues? Do they say it's a sin, or do they say it's something to be avoided?
It says it's something to be avoided, and that if not done, then there is in fact consequence.
There is and this is, in my opinion, the beautiful sociological insight of the Pentateuch, that if everyone just does their own thing and ignores the community, there is a certain concept of just doing your own thing and ignoring your community can create a certain issue which affects everyone. And I think in 600 BCE, that concept was unique.
We're talking
communal
about
responsibility for ritual impurity, not basis sin, just basis we have to do certain acts to clear ritual impurity, which are not sins.
I would agree. Yes, we're talking about a theocracy. And so many of these things were in regards to just that. It also goes into how one should sell, what types of approaches should be taken when it comes to marital issues, to land issues, etc.
You're going to bring up the Deuteronomy second law.
Yes. These are laws that pertain, though, not so much to salvific premises, but more so to just society. So, yes.
But the Deuteronomistic additions to the Pentateuch, and especially after, were very much clearly an influence of the trying to come to terms with the fall of the Northern Kingdom. And then in Samuel and through to Kings, trying to come to terms with the fall of Judea.
Yes. Again, very distinct in regards to principles spiritually. Those are, again, you've just made the point more clear that we're not speaking about spiritual things, but more of practical things.
Why can't spiritual imperatives of communal responsibility for the outcome of the people you're living around yourself, as exposed in the Exodus laws, versus the Deuteronomic laws and centralization of worship on a point in Jerusalem, which has its own issues, but why is the conception of that ideology necessarily invalidates it?
The conception of the ideology invalidate what specifically?
The utility and the outcome of what those texts were able to create, especially a form of unified identity in exile.
Yeah, exactly for what you just pointed out. Identity and specificity in regards to the different tribes, their interactions between themselves and others. But
of course, but why does that invalidate? Just because we can diagnose and dissect and understand where these sources came from, why does that necessarily invalidate the message?
Invalidate the message of
the Bible.
I don't think
Ecclesiastes, Job, the Pentateuch, the prophets.
I don't think that it does.
Okay. Well, I would agree. I would be in violent agreement with you in that sense.
Yes, but yeah, I think when we're what I was referring to is more of the ideology in regards to the narrative and its importance that gives credence to purpose as a social group, that we are chosen, we are set aside, we are favored, and we are supported. So when it comes to the endeavor of the variety of different lands within Canaan that were approached to be usurped, then these things helped. When it came to a loss, it was, again, that narrative and the promise made that was there to spur them on and forward. So these things are very different than saying there is a spiritual principle at hand. There is never any spiritual principle that is provided within Scripture. Not one.
Can I disagree with that point? There is a very clear spiritual principle which is provided throughout the Old Testament and is one of the rare things that links it to the New Testament, and that is the encounter of Yahweh in the wilderness. That you must go into the deep desert in order to experience God. We have contradictory accounts in Exodus 4 and Exodus 6, and the very famous, I did not reveal my name to your ancestors, but I tell you now that I am Yahweh. But there is this strong idea all through the Old Testament and carried on through the New Testament that the encounter with the divine is facilitated through the wilderness.
Yes,
the Midnight Canaanite hypothesis.
Yes, absolutely the case. And always it was the case too, that it was within the wilderness that there was this sojourn, so to speak, in terms of finding oneself or for a nation to find itself. The wilderness had always been this backdrop of transition. And yes, that's been consistent.
This wilderness had been the facilitator of the revelation of the divine.
In fact, I would say
even Elijah goes into the wilderness. Elisha or Elijah, I can't remember which one. Either the
Elijah,
the older one, or the
Elijah.
he goes
Yes,
into
he
the
was
divine. He gets the
bemoaning himself
cups.
in the wilderness and seeking
It has
God.
parallels to Exodus. Blah blah blah.
Yes.
So there is this strong, and then you get John the Baptist going into the desert in order to interact with the divine. There is this very strong common thread that the wilderness is a vessel or is a facilitator of the connection to the divine.
Agreed. And it's a type of chrysalis. Whenever there was so we have Abram and Sarai coming from Ur, traveling again through the desert, through the wild, then setting up and this nascent, emergent beginning for what would become Israel, right? And Isaac, Jacob, and Esau, etc. And then we have the transition yet again as they were making their way. We'll go ahead and jump through Egypt and making their way out of Egypt, and then the 40 years, and then again establishing themselves within the land. And then again, as they were going throughout that land, again through the desert, the transition again before we come into the kings and Saul, etc., etc. Yes.
But do you discount the hypothesis of fictive kinship that let's say the sons of Abraham were a way of bringing disparate tribes and beliefs together into a common unity?
Oh, that's a given absolute. Absolutely. That was the whole point.
Yeah, it's fictive kinship is how you buy, and it's one major reason why the Bible's so obsessed with transfer of property from father to son.
Yes.
You have to preserve the patriarchal lineageship.
Yes, and also
in the tribe.
All of the narrative and meaning behind it to those who would go forward. So the ecclesiastical hierarchy, and we have Aaron and so forth. But again,
you must be aware of like the documentary hypothesis where you have the J, E, P, and D and H source, the holiness code coming out of D. So you have layers of interpretation and writing, not especially, encapsulated in the Old Testament. Do you deny the documentary hypothesis?
I don't. Again, all of this is just going to show that there's an architectonic display in terms of the culture, in terms of what is the tradition, what it happens to be purpose, that it has this very clear path. But none of those things have anything to do with spirituality in and of itself, but everything to do with tradition based upon narrative and values associated.
I would disagree with you. I would go back to Genesis 1.
Would you bring up? I'm curious.
I would go back to Gen 1 and the separation of the waters. Okay, so it must have been, in my estimation, and like I'm free to, argue me down if I say something stupid. In my estimation, it must have been a very traumatic realization of the physical truth that if water falls out the sky, you can drink it and be okay, and you can water your crops and they'll grow. But if you take water out of the sea, which is right next to you, and you try and drink it or use that water to water your crops, they're going to die and you're going to die. So I think there is a fundamental realization in all the ancient myths of the separation, the chaos of waters, which we see in Tiamat and Marduk and blah, 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 all that old stuff. And we see the echoes of those myths inside. We see the echoes of those myths inside the Old Testament. but they are communicating a certain physical reality understanding, which is if it doesn't rain for 180 days, do not take the water from the sea and try and water your crops with it, because guess what? Your crops will die and you will die if you do that.
The sea, not the rivers and the lakes.
Right. So again, but so within, from the perspective of the Mishnahs, I could make an argument for this, this type of spiritual connotation when it comes to the waters.
Communication of knowledge, I would like to say, but okay, carry on.
But it's very the word eludes me, but it's very specific to I can't think of the term, but yeah, but again, I'm asking, so in regards to that, where is the spiritual principle? What do you see?
The revelation of the understanding that salt water will not satisfy you or make your crops grow. That we need these creation myths. Tiamat, Marduk, separation of the waters. These guys understood millennia ago that there was a certain type of water that would make things grow and a certain type of water that would kill everything.
But that's not all water on earth that would make things grow or kill everything. And that needs to be recognized.
Chris, just to respond to that, I think the argument would be that, like, well, still rivers and lake water is actually rainwater, right? The way it drains, oceans don't drain into rivers. It comes down. It's runoff from mountainous.
But they must have been faced with this scenario of like, oh my God, okay, if the water falls out the sky, I can collect it and drink it and use it to water my crops. But if I just walk like 10 kilometers down to the coast and take it out of the sea, it kills everything. So there must be an ancient fundamental memory of the differentiation between fresh water and salt water, which is the instigator.
Okay, so yes, we're in agreement. There was a distinction, there was recognition, and there was narrative associated in order for that to perpetuate, because there wasn't any type of science fact that they could rely on. Okay, so again,
they didn't know what a quantum field was.
How does this pertain to a spiritual truth in any way, shape, or form?
Because you see the same recognition and you see the same kind of like cosmological explanation inside the Bible. In Gen 1, Gen 2. And Gen 1 and Gen 2 are very interesting given they contradict each other. Gen 1, Yahweh God separated the waters, separated salt from fresh, and created the world. Gen 2, it was a dry, dusty world, and like the waters of life were brought out from underneath. You have competing theological views.
Okay, yeah, so again...
So how about this? So, can you give me an example of any spiritual practice or whatever that has a spiritual principle that you would consider a spiritual principle?
Yes. Yeah, the recognition that...
Wait. No, I was asking Saul specifically.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Specifically, it would just be, so the act of meditation would be a primary. So if we look at Hinduism, the act of meditation is the acknowledgement of the individual in relation to true self, to the higher self. And this is this spiritual principle of recognition of higher self and taking dominion over lower self. That's an example.
So would prayer be an example of a spiritual principle under your view?
No, because prayer is a communication to a very specific deity in a very specific way for very specific outcomes. Prayer, as it is given example within scripture, was always done in request of something or in exchange for something.
Okay. So if I'm understanding your point correctly, you're basically saying that when it comes to Christianity, they're making a specific narrative out of some type of spirituality idea, but it's not necessarily a fundamental principle versus something like practice meditation, where it is a metaphysical principle that is being practiced, but it's not toward some type of narrative out of a story.
Essentially, yes, that everything within the Abrahamic faiths are predicated upon narrative, which has association to very specific values. Those values happen to be metaphysical, like your soul suffering or not suffering, or having joy or not joy, but not principles in terms of
that didn't come to later. That was not in the Old Testament. Sheol was a land of rest and sleep.
Agreed. I'm generalizing in terms of the popular understanding for what is Christianity. But yes,
but it's technically incorrect and misrepresenting.
Yes, very much so. Yes, very much so. That was not a conception that they were abiding by at all. What they were abiding by was a relationship with Yahweh to the extent in which there would be support or lack thereof, where they would suffer the lack of support by being dominated by their land peers around them, or they would be the dominant. That was primarily
okay.
Or they would have good fortunes in terms of their flock, their crops, etc., etc.
But Placide, I agree violently and 100% of what you're saying. But how did we get from that point of view to Christianity? What was the process, the map, the development of the religion that took us from the point of view that you just described, which I believe is 100% accurate, into the apocalyptic view of modern Christianity?
Yeah, that was definitely the influence, in my view, of the Greeks and the Romans, and those who were luminaries that represented both of these, of the idealism, spiritual idealism of the Greek and Roman, and made this merger between Judaism. So people such as Paul, in particular, who was
there was an idea in the Greeks of the eternal soul. Like the Platonists, the Middle Platonists.
How to bridge those two to go from this is Yahweh and to continue this, which is why the Jews rejected outright what Paul had done. He bastardized their basis of identity and said, we're going to, include Gentiles into that. That was a no.
Yeah, but he wasn't the only one.
No, he wasn't the only one. Who else was really adept at doing this as well within this time period? Well, I'm going to give it to, I'm going to say Irenaeus he was amazing at doing that.
Irenaeus was centuries later.
Well, we're talking what, 3rd century.
Irenaeus wrote against the heresies of Gnostics.
Correct.
But of Paul's and Jesus's, because they were like 40, 50 years between each other. How many apocalyptic Jewish individuals arose in the Roman occupation of Judea?
There were quite a few, according to the Talmud.
And how should we differentiate those apocalyptic messengers?
Well, the Sanhedrin in their discussions that's recorded within the Talmud, they differentiated them in terms of the regions that they were most popular, and the messaging was essentially the same. But that differentiation was generally the regions. I remember it was a year ago, I went into The specifics within it was the it was the Babylonian Talmud and the Sanhedrin that was having meetings about these apocalyptic teachers and these Christs, as they called them. And they were very specific in delineating based upon specific areas and number of followers and influence.
And what does that mean for Christianity? Is that a challenge or a support?
Well, it wasn't. I don't think it was either, because at this point, Christianity was still in its most nascent formation. So it was more of this growth process for Christianity. Christianity didn't have a definitiveness at this point. You mentioned, the Gnostics, and we have Marcion, who had put together the first canon. And was saying, this is what it is. And then you have this other group of, you could call, I guess, the Christians, Antiochians, who were saying, no, this is nonsense. This doesn't comport with what we are seeing. And that began this, I guess, orthodoxy, so to speak.
So, oh, geez, what's the guy? There's a Roman historian that tells us that Valentinus was almost elected Bishop of Rome.
Phineas?
There's a historian that says that he was in the contention, like in the 1st, 2nd century AD, to be elected Bishop of Rome, like the head honcho.
Yes. Oh, okay. I know what you're. Okay, so we're talking. I get it. Yeah. So obviously, the rulers of the day were instrumental.
No. So allow me, like I have this idea of a book of like have you ever read Philip K. Dick, Man in the High Castle? Like, what if the Nazis had won the Second World War? And like he distills the deviation from his reality to our reality to assassination attempt on Roosevelt, and he wasn't willing to enter the war. So in that same vein, because clearly you know what you're talking about, and I really enjoy what you're saying. Let's imagine Valentinus was anointed Bishop of Rome in 150 AD or whenever it was. And the Roman Catholic Church and the influence of religion was pushed out to the world through the Roman Catholic Church. How do you think that would have been different if a Gnostic secret knowledge of the interaction of God had been the dude in charge in 150 AD? What would our world look like today? Because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking like
heretics.
I was thinking like the Large Hadron Collider would be a fucking cathedral to these people.
Jeez, wow. I
like a way to penetrate existence and a way to unpack materiality, and like, you know,
it's very likely
Sophia
that we would see a much greater parity between what is science and what is the spirituality. I believe that we
so
would
let's play this model out. What if the Gnostic Christians had control?
Stop it playing. Science is the new fucking religion. Stop it.
What if Gnostic Christians had played out our intellectual and scientific discovery over the last 500 years?
Then we would have theosophy.
Exactly.
We would have theosophy as a predominant idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how would they look at the LHC?
They would look at the exactly as you said. It would be an instrument. It would be the instrument of the cathedral. It would be the instrument of expression, and communication and interaction with the dimensions.
Are you stupid enough to think it's
with
not
the
now?
pleroma. Yeah.
Are you stupid enough to think it's not now?
Exactly.
It's already that.
What a horrific world.
What's that, Chris? What?
It's already that. What the fuck are you even talking about?
Well, not in a mainstream way. What he's proposing, I think, is extraordinarily brilliant and interesting. That if that were the mainstream Christianity is far from that today. And it is based upon tradition, it is based upon narrative, it is based upon all of these things. But it is
Do you really think that?
The sanctity of the body.
Science. Yeah, it eschews science. Christianity
Do you really
is
think that,
almost-
or do you really think they present a front as that?
Who, the scientists or the Christians?
The Christians.
The Christians don't want anything to do with science, generally speaking.
Well, that's depends.
Do you
but-
think the Roman Catholic Church didn't want anything to do with science? Not the people.
Imagine
The actual Vatican.
Gnostic. Imagine Gnostic.
The actual Vatican saw
theocracy.
is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Do
you really think that they don't want anything to do with science, the Vatican?
I don't have anything to say in regards to that. I don't have anything to say in regards to that.
Are you running from me again? Stop running from me and answer the question.
But let's see. Let's
Hold
explore
on,
the
hold
Gnostic
on, hold on.
interpretation.
Saul, quit running from me and answer the question.
Oh my gosh.
I don't have any opinions when it comes to the Catholic Church.
Okay, so in other
You
words,
never do. Why not?
okay, in other words, he doesn't know.
Why don't you ever have opinions on the Catholic Church, Saul?
I don't know.
See, told you.
Imagine the church fathers told you that.
Fucking first.
Imagine the if you, maybe you listen to them. Imagine the church fathers of Christianity said that belief in resurrection of Christ is irrelevant. The fact that he was a person and died for our sins, fuck that. Let's imagine he was a manifestation of a more ultimate order, and he came to tell us that we were trapped in a very evil and aggressive and it didn't make sense, the order that we were trapped in, and that knowledge and the way to escape was knowledge of the pleroma, knowledge of a future. And imagine Jesus came around and said, like, oh no, not everyone can be saved. Only people that have the right knowledge and understand the universe, they're the ones who'll be saved. Everyone who doesn't think about it, fuck them. They're dead to the world. They're useless. They don't hold the Shard of Sophia. But people who understand, people who debate it, people who think about it, then they hold a certain fragment of intellect, and they will be blessed by this hierarchical system. Sorry, I'm trying to very quickly explain Gnosticism.
Koleth, you are walking a very dangerous line here. Okay, are you a Gnostic? Are you a Gnostic?
I'm not, but I'm sympathetic to their views.
Well,
I understand
would say
their views.
There's a reason.
It is a very thin, dangerous line, isn't it, Saul? It's funny.
There's a reason
it's not
why
a very thin line.
The Gnostics were not invited to play anymore in the world, and what you're saying and the things that you're talking about certainly plays into that. The influence.
Heretics.
Problematic.
Yeah, sure. Who am I to contradict Irenaeus and his five?
Who are you?
Exactly. I like.
Hey,
Who
Saul,
am
you speak
I?
Latin
like it.
and Saul, you speak Latin
Hold
and Italian, don't you?
If the Gnostics were not a big deal, why would Irenaeus write 5 books about how they were so shit?
Saul, you speak Latin and Italian.
Monte raise a hand.
Yes,
at this point.
yes, I do.
Thank you. I was just wondering.
Why? What are you getting at?
And I was just wondering.
Then you were saying something.
Towards my
So,
or
My
what do they call
friend, imagine that
You are a
Valentinus
Gnostic.
imagine Valentinus was elected the Bishop of Rome
Hold the phone, brother.
in 120,
Please.
and his theology and his ideology, his middle Platonistic, maybe late Platonistic ideas
It's okay,
of the
just
pleroma.
wander off.
Imagine the world we would live in if he was the defining characteristic of dogma and faith.
Again, if he were the defining characteristic of the dogma and the faith, we would have less dogma and a different type of faith.
Exactly.
Very different. Yes.
But what would that mean to our world today?
We would have I don't know why this
I know. I love this speculation. I'm not.
I like it as well, but so let me be thoughtful. I would imagine that it would be a much more advanced world in many regards.
But it would also be totalitarian, because one of the fundamental designs of Gnosticism is hidden knowledge. Only.
Who are you? Are you a Gnostic? You say no, but you sound like a Gnostic.
I'm a Christian, but I've
very much
I've
like
studied.
a Gnostic and very anti-Christian.
What kind of Christian are what?
I'm a Catholic. So one of the fundamental precepts of Gnosticism is hidden knowledge. Like, there is a way to the divine, there is a way to pleroma, which is not to be known to other people, and we must hide that knowledge.
Are you Eastern Orthodox?
I'm Catholic. Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic, okay.
As vanilla as it comes. But there is this idea, there is this kind of, I don't know, this heresy, this kind of against what was deemed to be true. And I love it. I find it fascinating. I find studying it helps my own faith.
I see.
This wouldn't be the first person I met who's like a Christian, but delve into some type of other spiritual idea.
I think the Roman Catholic Church are a bunch of heretics.
No,
I love reading what the Roman Catholic
Hold on, I'm not done
Orthodox
speaking.
Church says about the heretics.
Hold on. So I think the Roman Catholic Church is a bunch of heretics, don't you? Saul.
I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say about the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, there's a bunch of people that would disagree with you.
Like, I literally met a person who is Christian, but
Eastern Orthodoxy is even more heretics.
But also works with a demon. So whatever.
Wild Jester and
what, Saul?
And Chris.
Why are you?
I don't want to be rude, but I really want to explore the world with
You talked a
Mercedes.
lot. I think you can let Jester finish talking. Hold on. Go ahead, Jester.
I was just making a point. Like I did meet two Christians who like are Christian but like work with a demon. That's all I wanted to say.
Yes. What do you think about the Protestants?
Oh my gosh.
I would love, Mercedes, I would love to discuss what our modern world would look like if Valentinus had become the Bishop of Rome. I think it's a beautiful mirror to materialism and fundamentalism. I think the Gnostics would have been a horrific plague on humanity.
Gnostics would have been wonderful.
I am a Gnostic.
I think there would have been plague on. I think there would have been a plague on humanity.
I think the Roman Catholic Church is a plague on humanity.
I think if you told the Gnostics about the Large Hadron Collider,
I hear you breathe in when I said that.
They would do awful things to people.
Saul, you took a deep breath like, God, Chris, shut up. Was that you that did that, Saul? love it when I get under your skin.
But Sadie, like, imagine a world.
It's wildly
like,
adorable, Saul, when I make you mad.
Sadie, imagine a world controlled by them and their theology, and we're living in it
Saul and I
today.
are both Gnostics. It would be a wonderful world.
I think there would be a lot of good in this world, and I see that world emerging today.
Me as well.
How?
Me as well, Saul. Advancements in science, advancements in everything.
The recognition of the truth, exactly that. Right now, we have people who are discussing this world as this universe as being holographic, as being representative, as not substantive in and of itself. We have people, both atheist, both theists, and those who are spiritualists, recognizing that there is in fact a fundamental substratum of truth and reality that we have yet to fully recognize. Science is on the bridge of this.
That's speculative.
You think so? I would say.
I know so.
Really?
That's speculative. I think that's factual. I think the church has been a hindrance, especially, the Roman Catholic that has a broad-reaching influence.
Okay, so what predictions are fact versus speculation?
So the fact of the matter is that science is much more predominant in terms of its influence on how people view themselves existentially and the world. And that science has made it very clear that there is an entire reality in terms of how things function and work that is very, very much in alignment with what the Gnostics have been saying.
How has that been made clear?
It's been made clear when we had in 2021 non-local realism recognized within the physics community from a quantum level. It's been made clear.
What about statistical independence?
I'm sorry?
To let Saul finish and not interrupt him. And then you might understand what he's saying.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, what about statistical independence of the results of the experiment?
The physical independence?
Statistical independence.
I'm not hearing that word. What?
Statistical independence.
Oh, statistical independence. What do you mean? What about the statistical independence? That it's been validated and verified, peer reviewed? Yes. That's the reason for the Nobel Prize? Yes.
That statistical independence has been violated.
You think so? How?
I'm asking you. You were saying that.
No, the statistical independence in terms of the establishment of a non-local realism within the quantum realm.
Okay.
Has not been violated.
Where do you fall down in that debate?
Remember, Saul.
It's not a debate. It is a recognition. There's no
and it's a
recognition of what?
A recognition.
A fact.
That the recognition that at the quantum level, there is in fact a reality of things that are not based on any of the things from this place. That
we understand.
The material world is not predicated, is not a predicate, is what it means. And that at the macro level, yes, we then have this different phenomena, but from the quantum level, these things are and are not simultaneously. They are representative, that it is a representation, but they are not locally fixed upon anything, which means that the principles are something that obviously are not material and obviously not localized either, which brings us to this understanding that the Gnostics were operating on, that we have this illusion, this Maya.
I have no love for the Gnostics.
Well,
that's only because going for it would make you a fucking heretic by your own damn church. Your church doesn't want you to know things. Why the hell you think they have their Vatican locked up so tightly in their archives and shit? Don't be daft.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me ask you a question. Hello?
You said let me ask you a question, so naturally I'm going to be quiet while you ask it.
Why is the bare mass of the Higgs boson so unnaturally irrelevant to the implied mass of its quantum corrections? In other words, the square of the UV cutoff.
What does that have to do with the goddamn fucking thing I just said? Can you elaborate on that first? Because you're sitting there jumping. Hold the fuck on. I'm not done speaking. Do you hear words coming out of my mouth? Exactly.
Yeah, I do.
Now, that has absolutely nothing to do with anything I just said. Does it? No. Saul, does that have anything to do with what I just said? The answer is no, in case you were wondering.
Okay, well, I'm just kind of...
So don't sit there and deflect. Don't deflect from what I said.
Okay.
Because you know it's true and you don't want to address it.
What's true?
So you weren't even listening to what I said then, were you? Or did you just get offended for nothing?
What is true? So, the bare mass of the Higgs boson is unnaturally
A damn
low.
thing to do with this conversation. So why don't you go back to what we were speaking about? I don't know if you can't track, or maybe I used words you didn't know, or whatever.
Chris, perhaps the line of conversation should have its rest.
As you wish.
I feel like I'm going to have to come back and listen to this conversation 1,000 times to fully digest it, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's in part, like, I think the reason why both you and me, Logic, is like having slight difficulty tracking is mainly because like the it's probably in part of the lingo. So
Koleth is very knowledgeable in a variety of different things, and he and I are having a conversation at a variety of different levels.
Yeah.
Saying things, and I'm speaking in response to things, and Chris also understands that as well. So it's not a single
conversation as of which he's being extremely disingenuous, Saul.
Well, I can't really speak on it,
I mean,
Chris.
yeah, but
I know that. That's why I did, but as you wish, I said. And you're the only person on this app besides Bart that I'll yield to in that way. And I think you know that, you fucking twat.
I'm just saying that when you're talking like the spiritual aspects, because I'm not used into that degree, I'm so easily lost just because of that.
Essentially, the base layer of the conversation is, what if, in fact, instead of the church becoming this religious powerhouse, that it was more of a spiritual, aka / scientific leader? What type of influence and what type of impact would that have in our society? And how would that branch off? And then he introduced this hierarchy in terms of what I'm always talking about. Oh, well, we would need a dictatorship, an absolute type of leadership in order to facilitate the things that would follow. And yes, that is also accurate in a variety of different ways. That's not to say that anyway, it's to say that would be accurate. So that's essentially the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, this idea of hidden knowledge versus and Gnosticism versus enlightenment is the tension.
Yes, enlightenment, yes. And religion is designed for a reduction in awareness of principles. Principles are never discussed in religion. There's never because when you have principle principles like math. It's like teaching a person how to do math. I can't bamboozle them when it comes to science, because then they can check that out. I can say, oh well, this is how light works. Oh really? Well, let me take a look at the Maxwellian equations and take a look at those differentials and see if that in fact cashes out. But if I don't know anything about differential equation, then you can tell me anything you'd like. And in fact, because I don't know it, it would be even easier for you to provide a narrative so that I would have some sort of a concept. That is precisely what religion does. It stays away from principles and speaks to narrative.
Absolutely, and that's what's so dangerous about it, especially when you involve, that small little country over there known as the Holy See. It's called the Holy See, SEE, for a reason.
Yeah, man, I'm sick of are we talking about the Jews?
Oh, for fuck's sakes.
No, I was joking. Okay, but could I change topics?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Saul was over this one anyway.
Yeah, change topics if you want.
Okay. I don't think hunting would be legal in a vegan government. I think
Jesus Christ.
I think in a vegan government, abortion.
Okay.
I don't know.
W
should I
logic.
have done that? I don't have mods. Okay, word.
You know what?
He has bad takes anyways. He is a flat earther, by the way. Anyways.
Saul's a flat earther too.
It's weird how I've literally never had a mod, and I just have these inklings. I rarely kick anyone, but if within 10 seconds I get a feel, I just boot you.
W logic.
But I am serious about the flat earther thing. He is. Yeah.
So I think that it's a good conversation. You want to get back to talking about the Protestant Saul?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Chris, no.
Do you want to talk about the Gnostics more?
I can discuss Gnosticism. I'm not going to discuss anything that has to do anything with anything like that. I know. Not today, not ever. It's not going to happen.
Wait. Why?
Okay. Well, would you like to talk about? No. Whoa. No. I asked you a question a little while ago, and you still haven't answered it about your church and the Vatican and its archives. But you can't remember it. So when you remember that, we'll continue the conversation with you. Right now, I'm talking to Saul.
Are you a fucking moron?
No, you are.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to touch that. So we're going to be quiet and let me finish my conversation with Saul. Thank you. So Saul, what do you think?
Make an intelligent comment.
Well, you haven't the whole time. I think you've been tipping the bottle a little too much, but that's neither here nor there. I could walk circles around you drunk, too. You want to try it? Saul's seen it before. Don't play with me.
Yes, let's go.
Anyway, I'm done engaging
you're
with that
scared.
for the night. No, I'm not scared of you. I think you've been drinking too much, and I think you've sat there. And how long, Saul, was it that you had a conversation with him where he couldn't answer your question? It was a hot minute.
I just am trying to understand the hostility here and how it's moving the conversation forward.
The hostility started with some type of a conversation about if Gnostics somehow end up being in charge, and then I don't know exactly the tipping point, but it's from that conversation.
I can tell you the tipping point. It was a social sorting tipping point.
It's very interesting.
The tipping point was when nobody else got to speak.
Well, I mean, I stood there for a while, and I didn't get to speak for probably about a good 20 minutes, so I left because, it was like, hey, maybe this isn't the time.
And now you're back trying to deflect for a conversation and come at someone, and I'm not in the mood for it. So I think if I'm wrong, Saul would be more than happy to tell.
Tim, mute your mic. Yeah, thank you. You were echoing. All right. This is doing. Wait, hold on.
Oh, humble. How are you?
This is doing nothing. So, let me think of a topic.
Hello.
So, wait. Actually, no, humble. What do you want to talk about?
Oh my goddess, you just put me on the spot.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. You're like, okay, you're definitely like the newest person to just come up, so that's why I asked.
I like to be the new kid on the block, so
Humble's also wildly intelligent.
shh, don't tell people that. Secrets.
Keep it a secret.
Make a good point.
Make a good point.
Yeah, please.
Well, I think that there's something to be said about the view of the collective at large being externalized versus internalized. I think there's often
Wonderful.
I
What a
think that-
wonderful bullshit point.
Excuse the fuck out of you. What did you just say to her?
I said that's a bullshit point. Doesn't mean anything.
Why don't you take your bullshit ass fucking mouth and go elsewhere? I apologize, Humble. Will you continue?
Hey, Humble, I love you.
This is
So,
the family
good to
channel.
see you guys. Have a good day.
I love you, sweetheart. You too. Enjoy the full moon.
I will. Well, the energy is right there.
Right.
Bye.
Yep.
Always good to see you.
Okay, Humble, would you mind like getting a little in depth of what you just said?
Well, I would say that I'm considered a novice when it comes to, or I consider myself a novice when it comes to spiritualism. But there's things that I know and I see and I experience that can't be explained in what I would say common tongue. And it didn't come from looking outside of myself into the world. We have these lenses and we often judge or make judgments upon the world and our experiences extrovertedly instead of introvertedly. And I think that science has a way, especially the quantum field, has a almost perfected to the degree of where it's at, a perfected method of explaining things. And I think that science in and of itself is a religion, and a beautiful one at that, because it has a way of breaking down data and information and both giving us a macro and a micro view of things so that we have better language of understanding. And I don't think that that's looked at in a positive light sometimes.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think that people actually look down on it, which is absolutely absurd and why they never grow.
Yeah, it's like saying one is religious but not spiritual, because science is spiritual. And there's experiences that people have that are beyond, the collective's comprehension that can be explained through scientific methods of experimentation and data collection. And I mean, they've done things that I couldn't even put language to myself, but in reading it, I understand it. And it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint of everything. It's if you take it in any religious scriptures that are, dated, not, necessarily our current scriptures that aren't being written, but being written in science. But if you look at the older scriptures, ancient texts and philosophies and theology, you'll see there's the same blueprints overlaid in every single one of them. It's the same exact thing expressed in a different way.
So I believe that as well.
Okay, so tonight is just esoteric knowledge night. Is that what we're doing now?
Well,
We can go back to talking about the Vatican if you would like.
I mean, you have Chris, who is agnostic. Logic believes at least some type of God concept, I believe. You have Tim, that is a Calvinist. So, and then there's you, Saul, and I'm the only atheist on the panel. So like, all right, I don't know Humble's view, but
Saul wants to
I'm
talk about the
guessing some
Vatican
type
and
of
the Catholic
spiritual
Church.
aspect. But point being, I am not that antagonistic to spiritual beliefs. So point being, like, it's probably esoteric night.
Yeah, it's
all hell the Pope.
And I'll say my position on this, which I don't actually speak out loud, usually in the public. My position is unity. It's your expression and how you choose to experience divinity is your own. The all that is the all, whether it can be named or not named, we're all one. And there's unique expressions of that. I believe in cultural diversity. I believe in having a unique expression and fostering unity within that. So whatever you want to slap a label on that and call it, Luciferianism to agnostics to atheists to Catholics, Buddhists, it don't matter. They're exactly the same. That which is a rose by any other name is it not a rose, because the essence of it is there. So I get to the heart of the matter. I don't just look at things on a superficial, we slapped a label on it and we're going to dissect it and call it, anything other than that which it is. It's the essence. Our hearts are all united. We're all human beings, spiritual, soulful beings having an experience here, and we're all on a journey of evolution. Survival of the fittest sometimes.
Yeah, I took in a lot of that. I loved everything you said. I'm still interested on this word principle and the tension between it and spirituality. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that.
I think that's
or
a
not.
fascinating topic. That's a brilliant point. I was just looking this up, and Saul, you might enjoy this one. I was looking at our current laws because I study the law system, and the 7 Hermetic principles they're considered in language that we utilize in the legal system as maxims. They're maxims of law. Well, every branch of the law has different sets of maxims or principles that all tie back to the 7 universal principles, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's very fascinating to me as well. And would we say that this is not related to spirituality, though, these principles?
They absolutely are. They're the fabric of our creation. It's inherent in all things.
But Saul, did you say earlier that principle and spirituality aren't related? Or were you trying to say they
I was
are?
saying, yeah, that they certainly are, but that religion and principles are inimical. So,
Oh, religion, and you're saying religion and spirituality. Oh, right, it's this tension.
So religion is.
I'm still trying to digest that.
So when you think of a religion, when you think of Islam, when you think of Christianity, when you think of, I'm going to say, general Judaism, what you have is practice in regards to conduct, and you have narrative that guides these practices. There are no principles, meaning there are no fundamental essences or fundamental truths that pertain across the board in terms of reality outside of the narrative. There's just a narrative. God did this, God wants that, God said this. You therefore need to do this, you should do that and not do that. But why? When the question is asked why, that's where principle would come in, is just because God said, or because that's just the way it is. Where principle says, this is fundamentally true, regardless of any narrative that's associated. That's very different. It's the difference between saying, the sun goes to sleep at night because it's tired. And understanding, well, there is a progression and a path of movement, and this is why we don't see the sun at certain times. Very different. One is principally based, the other is narrative based. So when it comes to religion, religion is not powerful if narrative is not at the center. It becomes less effective if there is a principle to guide, because then one can say, well, then this then is a measure of what is true outside of a narrative. And these other things then could also be true. It would dismiss and minimize the effectiveness of the narrative.
It's the difference between the difference between an internal process and an external process.
Exactly that.
Totally. Yes.
So there people will say, "Oh, well, I believe that this is a spirit, like Christianity." Question: soul. What is it? There's no definition for anything. A soul, never defined. Spirit, it's used. Defined, never. The life, not defined. Leviticus 17, life is in the blood. That's speaking to the ecclesia. It's speaking to the priesthood, but it doesn't speak to the general public. Well, what does that mean? No answer. Why is sacrifice necessary? Why was everybody sacrificing? What's the principle of sacrifice? The answer, no principle. It's just how God metes out judgment or justice. But why? Because that's what God decided.
Because it's a punishment-driven system based on fear and control. Power. It ultimately boils down to power.
Hi, everybody. I'm kind of new to this. The thought experiment. I was thinking. I was thinking more in the lines of conspiracy, and how the government is rushing to go to a planet. What like Elon Musk is planning on leaving Earth, and then a bunch of other billionaires, they're deciding, oh yeah, like we should go underground. So what's that about? Like
what?
Yeah, like you heard about that?
No, where
Where's
this coming from the topic we're on?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious how you got there.
I don't know. It says right here, thought experiment. So I'm like, well, what I think is that like, well, you know, like what I find that's entertaining and much more interesting. Yeah.
That's probably my fault. I should probably do a better job at like picking a topic. My whole vibe is just to kind of come in and talk about whatever. And I actually do really appreciate you coming in and just kind of like dropping your thoughts. However, we're like 3 or 4 hours deep, and we're so deep into a conversation that it does seem a little derailed to pick up that conversation. But I do appreciate. No, don't apologize. I would encourage you to come back another time, and when you find some break in the conversation, you know, feel free to bring and change the topic. Just I think now might be a little bit of a bad time, but much love for coming up for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I was so curious as to what was happening.
I mean, like I said, it is probably my fault for just putting. I mean, right? It's cool that she came up and just thought. That is kind of what the background's getting at. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't really have an originating topic, anyways. But yeah, you got to read the room too.
Thing. Yeah.
So what were we talking about again? My brain got seriously.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's hilarious.
I was like, wait, we were talking about what? Last I remember is internal, external processes.
Well, yeah, based on the fundamental principles, which is the fabric of the universe. It's what all things are connected and created by. But
quick question: can you define what a fundamental principle is, real quick? I'm not doing that to be like, oh, can you define that for me? Like,
that's okay.
Yeah, I just want to know where it comes from.
So there's 7 universal principles that are foundational pieces. They're the blueprints of the fabric of creation. All things bound by it.
And those are?
The all is mind, the universe is mental, correspondence, cause and effect, rhythm, vibration, gender, those things.
Okay.
Yeah, I've to be honest, principles. That's what this. What is this called? These seven principles. What's
The
is this
Hermetic.
like?
Seven.
Is
The
this
So
what is
Hermetic.
this?
Hermes Trismegistus.
Yeah, it's Hermeticism.
Yeah, Hermeticism. So essentially, a principle is a fundamental truth that's applicable in all ways and serves as a premise for all the categories beneath it. So when we talk about a rule, rules are a bit more malleable. You can have rules for a game, you can have rules for a household, and those can change accordingly to different games, different households. Then you have laws. Laws are a bit more broad. So the laws of a city, and then the laws of, let's say, a county, the laws of a state, and then you have like this master law, like the law of the country, like our constitution serves as this master blueprint for the law. Then you have a principle, and the principle is even more broad, means that it doesn't matter whether it's this country or the planet, every planet, everywhere will adhere to this principle. So the principle of vibration, for example, is that it doesn't matter what planet and what galaxy, it is certainly vibrating. It doesn't matter that where it is or what it is, there is a cause and effect relationship with it, whether it's an atom, a proton, a neutron, a gluon, a muon, doesn't matter. So these things are so fundamental that there isn't anything that doesn't adhere to it or is based on it.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you for that. How did Delos break down? My confusion, I suppose, is like, so the unity issue of like how we could. Is there a fundamental principle, or is seven
You
as low
mentioned
as?
it. Unity is the fundamental principle. It means that there isn't
Right.
anything that is not predicated on it. From existence, if it exists, we recognize it because there is and when I say unity, a relation, an interrelationship. So every thought and every condition, every circumstance, everything is interrelated. And interrelation is how we do anything, whether it's math, to measure, quantify, whether it's experience, whether it is anything and everything. So interrelation is the most fundamental, absolute principle. There is nothing and no concept outside of it.
Yeah, the interrelation of unity and multiplicity, I suppose, that relation, that unity, in order to logically derive any meaning, we're going to have to we're going to have to deal with this tension between unity and multiplicity.
Yes.
When you fully comprehend and have an understanding of the principles, and that the core of it is relationship of unity, seeing that all are unified and that the illusion is a disconnect, that there are separateness, then it truly begins a healing process for the collective. It's transcendent.
Yeah, I guess the religious, like for me, this seems to be a practice or a religion. But I understand that I guess we're hesitant to use that term, but right, wouldn't it be real? Would a principled act, couldn't the practice of principled acts be a religion? Am I wrong in saying that?
Well,
They could be. But how do you define religion?
But they aren't necessarily. They aren't
Whether you
necessarily.
recognize them or not, though, they still govern you.
Fact. Yeah. Whether you
Yes,
recognize
yes.
them or however you choose to recognize them,
They
it's still
still
the government,
govern, yeah.
right? Whereas a narrative, you can say, I disagree with that narrative, and that doesn't, I don't believe in that or this
Right.
or whatever. That you could do that, but with the principle, no.
But so would something like I hesitate to even use the figure, but would the archetype of Christ be this idea of a principled like, or let's not use Christ. Let's just think about a person who's completely principled, but without. Is it possible to be without religion in that sense? Wouldn't they be acting they're acting without narrative, but they're in the sense that they're acting completely principled. That seems like a religious. I am understanding the sort of the contradiction in my own language according to this Hermeticism lexicon now that I'm thinking about it, but I still see it as somewhat of a religion or like a practice of principled acts. Yeah.
So this is kind of what Zal was talking about, but I like to take the big extravagant stuff and simplify it, make it really easy to digest. Name something that is not vibrating. If that's a universal principle and all things are in a state of vibration, all things are in a state of rhythm, and that is the core fundamental basis of the fabric of creation, and it is within all things, and it is all things inherent. Name something that isn't a spiritual practice. Name something that isn't divine, that is not living, sentient. The spoon that you eat with, the fabric of it. So religion, I think, is an external thing. You have to, put the silverware in a certain order, or, there's going to be a punishment. Okay, that's religion. Versus a spiritual practice of unity and understanding or comprehension that is inherent within all of us. I am you and you are me, as unique expressions of the all, or 7 universal principles that are the fabric of our being. Same as the spoon and the toothbrush, all of it. It's just the perceptive lens that it is seen through that shifts it.
Is the spoon actually a spoon, or is the spoon really there? Don't get me started.
Right.
I stopped brushing my teeth years ago.
No, Lord. That's great.
They're chicken cracking.
Everything that you said, totally true. There's this recognition that you can measure, or you can come to a recognition of principle by just asking those types of questions. Is there anything that this doesn't apply to? If the answer is no, you have a principle in your hands.
Yeah, for me, I've condensed the idea of basic symbolic logic into this recognition of unity and multiplicity and the ongoing tension. And I guess formalized to myself how deduction works to heal through humility, right? The syntax of rationality requires falsifiability, and this relational or relative aspect of ratio and meaning, and that demands humility from your interlocutor. When I'm having a disagreement with my girlfriend, right, it's the reminding principle or practice, or like you said, the fundamental principle that keeps me grounded rather than emotionally distraught.
What is your spiritual outlook?
Well, I was raised atheist, staunch atheist, really. I was exposed to some church experiences, but not through family pressure. Just going with friends or as communal events. I did go to private school as well. That was Anglican, but everyone at that school was fairly atheist, and the church, the weekly church experience was more of a school. A school gathering than it was preaching or anything like that. But as I dove down into academia and learned more about logic, it has brought me to some spiritual beliefs. I guess I would call myself a Christian, Judeo-Christian, in the sense that I think that but I mean, I could call myself a Gnostic, or I guess these Hermetic ideas are making sense to me as well. There's a lot of Hindu ideas that make sense to me as well, but at the basis of it would be this recognition of the importance of the cross, the symbology of the cross, and how it functions for like humility and healing. That sounds weird, but that's where I'm coming from.
Cool.
Yeah. But ultimately, I think that like deduction, this idea of deduction, like in order to be rational, it just requires a level of humility, and that's really the fundamental practice that I've noticed. Like if I'm getting irate or if I'm becoming emotionally distraught, then that's basically a proof that I'm irrational. And if I'm not able to put forward a claim that's falsifiable, that's also a proof that I'm irrational. So if you truly understand those principles, or whatever you want to call them, rules that I've made for myself, then it basically demands humility and like a lightheartedness to communication, you know?
That's beautiful.
It's literally
Wow, thank you.
of the approach of the spiritual path, or as they call it, the spiritual path, the dharmic path. The first tenet is reverence, and then it is being willing and able to receive and follow instructions. The receptivity of the heart is humility.
I think like following practices is what turns people off to spirituality itself, because spirituality can get weird. if yeah, it can get weird. And you know, I was raised Christian, but I deconstructed from Christianity, and I met some really lovely, amazing human beings, a couple of them sitting in this room right now, who taught me kind of the scientific backing behind the spirituality that I felt, which was, you know, there is a connection that we all have. We're all human beings. We all want to be loved and accepted. And I think that's just across the board. And so there's a beauty in being able to be open-minded and open to other people's ways of believing and thinking, and then being able to say, I understand who they are and where they are within their path and that journey and why they are that way. It's acceptance, right? And I think acceptance is what allows us to move past things and create new things. Anyways, little tangent.
No, I love that. Yeah, I love that. It also has me thinking about like sanity and this idea of like lying to yourself or telling the truth, and how that's balanced with being grace. Because if you're a staunch rationalist, it upsets you to lie to yourself, and that can run you into a hole, because just like in reality, you tell white lies even to yourself to ease the tension of disillusion, right? We can't be certain all the time. And so that's this essence of grace, where relaxing your assumptions in a lot of cases will actually make you more accurate in your ability to like judge reality, you know? And so you don't want to lie to yourself. You want to be as honest as you can, but you also want to forgive yourself when you either learn something new or just sort of like, you know, recognize your own ignorance. That's a W just as much as lying to yourself, or not, you know, telling the truth to yourself is. And so sanity seems to be this balance of, you know, forgiving yourself, but also staying true to the course.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I told were going to go to hell if they didn't have Christ. And it's so funny to me now. I look back at it and I'm like, you know, I'm able to admit that I was wrong. And there's a beauty to that authenticity that happens when you're like, oh shit, like I literally based my life around this entire thing that was taught to me that was wrong. And don't get me wrong, I find truth and lies in everything, right? There's things that I can take from every way of thinking, but I don't really stick to like labels. I don't label anything because I'm always changing, right? I'm a part of science in the universe, which this is what I've come to, and I've had this conversation. Some of the people have heard this before, but if science teaches us anything, it's that things are always changing and they're always moving. And so if there's one thing that I know is that if it's telling us that we get one piece of new information that could change our entire reality, is that I know nothing. And by knowing that I know nothing, I know everything there is to know.
At least with like symbology, because the unity is real, but it's this interpretation of it that we're going to be limited in. And for us to be ignorant enough to think that we can hold it or handle the truth, the quote unquote truth, is probably the most ignorant aspect of like human nature at all, right? Like our dissonance is required for our rationality to a certain degree, at least to cooperate with others.
I can see that. Thank you for that.
I can see it, but I also think of these desires that are put within each individual. And I question that. I question it a lot, actually. What is this? What is the purpose and the function of a desire? Is it not the will? So if we are striving for something, it creates movement, which then prohibits stagnation, which would just create decay. I think striving for truth is important, in other words.
Yeah, I would agree. It's this like left and right hand issue. It's with one hand we strive towards it, and with the other we recognize that limit.
Saul, and then we come to what is the sacrifice? Because it's big.
Yeah, I've decided I don't like that.
What?
Sacrifice.
So there is, on this path of, knowing or seeking truth, there are fundamental truths that are revealed. One of them is that the path requires sacrifice of your desires, sacrifice of your own will, or what the illusion is of your will, because truly it all is the sum total of your existence and evolution. But it's this junction in the road where it's like, okay, is it punishment? I don't know. I think I could see how people could perceive it that way, but it does require sacrifice. Sacrificing your ideas, sacrificing your desires, root all the way up, sacrificing possessions, family, friends, connections that you thought you had. It is a lonely path at times.
That's why I've adopted hedonism. It's my new path. It's easy, it's simple, direct.
Is it Lucifahedonism?
Lucifahedonism. Yeah. Hedonism, I want that. It's just easy. Just whatever makes you happy, indulge in that. The end. That's it. Why can't we just do that? Just simple.
Well, I think you answer your own question. You can.
And then comes into question the different things that people find joyful.
Yeah, so the issue...
Consequences.
Okay, so I kind of blame this in part of like analytical philosophy, because like when it comes to... Okay, I blame this in part of analytical philosophy, but it's like our main attitude within when it comes to like God concept versus non-God concept, it's almost always going to be, oh, I have the absolute truth because la da 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 or whatever, right? And I really do blame analytical philosophy because of that obsession of trying to do that, because a lot of the times they don't really adopt the idea of like one man's trash is another man's treasure type of deal. They kind of just adopt, okay, because an atheist would probably say, hey, you believe it just because it feels good, but that's not necessarily true. And then a Christian would probably make the same argument. So it just boils down to egotistical nonsense, in my opinion.
Spot on.
I kind of think like way outside the box here. If we're all connected, but I think of it like this. Everybody is a universe unto themselves with infinite universes of themselves within themselves. And yet they're all still connected. So yeah, perception is like 9/10 of the law. What you, as a man thinketh, so he is. So whatever you perceive, that's your reality. Doesn't make it the fundamental whole of it. It just means that through your perceptive lenses, that's what you're going to experience, because that's what's going on inside you. If you thought it, therefore you are.
Not to sidetrack, but like, so there on another live, a Hindu was basically making the same point, but because in part of the lingo, but because of the fact like the atheist that was up on the panel was like, it sounded like chupada. I forgot how to say it, but basically he was basically making the point that it just sounded like nonsense to him because basically I'm just making the point like, I'm sorry, my mind is on the fritz right now. Basically, overall, like, when you make that point, chances are an atheist will probably say, that just sounds like nonsense. And it's just fucking annoying. Sorry.
I agree with you 1,000%. It is annoying.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, don't be sorry at all.
Like,
Saul, listen, you are free to make any choice you want to, my guy. Like any choice. If you want to indulge in the desires, dude, I will bring the popcorn and the beverage, and I will just sit and watch the shit show. But you're just not free from the consequences of those choices.
Wow. So you're trying to say that there are going to be detrimental consequences? I reject that.
Hey, listen, I'm not saying they're going to be detrimental.
If it's good enough for Charlie Sheen, it's good enough for me.
No, my guy.
Are you a fellow Vatican assassin warlock? You guys brought up Charlie Sheen and you don't remember the whole Vatican assassin warlock bit? They're too young. Oh no, y'all are young. You just remember the winning thing, didn't you? Bear Cub remembers.
And I personally have not watched a lot of TV, so I couldn't tell you anything that was on that magic mirror box.
Bear Cub remembers Harambe.
A what? A Harambe? Is that what you said?
You don't know who Harambe is?
I probably do. Describe him. Who's Harambe? Harambe.
Sarah.
Sarah, do you remember who Harambe is? Please tell me you remember Harambe.
He was the gorilla who attacked the little boy, fell into his cage, and he didn't attack him. But
Yeah, because Elon Musk did a rap about Harambe. He dropped a track. Elon Musk. He dropped a track about it. Yeah, he did.
What?
Yeah, it's on. It's like true facts. He did like a rap about Harambe.
Wait, hold on.
About saving him or something.
Did he sing it himself?
He did. He really did.
Fuck no. Oh,
yeah. Look it up. Elon Musk, Harambe.
Harambe didn't deserve
I
to die.
wish I didn't have that information.
I'm sorry.
I'm grateful for the information. I know what I'm doing after this.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was dealing with a doll problem when I first came up. But Saul, I came up to tell you, you are perfectly okay living in a delusion, but understand that while living in that delusion, you already sacrificed reality.
Fine. Why is everybody against? You know, this is my problem. Everybody wants to live in reality and deal with all the problems with it. I just assume jump right past all that and live in delusion and save myself the headache.
So
who's wise now?
But
Oh my gosh.
But that doesn't work in practical situations. I was in a situation yesterday where I would have much rather, imagined the problem wasn't there, but there was a real violent dog on my property. My husband got bit by it. If I imagined that didn't happen, no amount of imagining or delusion is going to take that real threat away from me. That's the problem when you live
What
in
happened?
delusion.
What happened with your husband? What did he do?
Oh, he grabbed a hammer from my porch and beat the dog, and then we ran to the truck and called 911. And
Wow.
then they came, and we were stuck in the truck for an hour. He was stuck in the back of a police car because we couldn't get him to a safer location, and it was just a nightmare. But yeah, so you can't live in a delusion when the rest of the world lives in reality, because when you do that, the real life situations that happen are going to happen regardless or not whether you see them.
Sarah, do you live in Texas?
Hey,
I do.
Okay, it's a Texas thing, man. People don't keep their
Sarah,
guns.
you hurt my feelings by just speaking reality, okay? I'm crossing my arms now.
Was this a
you
bit?
do not have to realize.
Oh no,
you
that
do not
actually
have to
happened.
realize. So, Saul, you do not have to realize the real lies with your real eyes ever. You can sit in that bubble. I'm okay with that. I support you 100%.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So you're going to be sitting in that yard with that dog alone, because I'm not going to participate in your delusion. I'm just telling you that, but I'll let you do it.
Why is everybody so against delusion? I don't.
I'm not. Like, if that's. But the reality is that we live in a hard deterministic theory set of time.
Oh, here we go. Why did you do? He's just baiting me. Did he say that we're in a deterministic world? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we
Determinism?
live in a hard deterministic world with a B theory set of time.
With a B. Okay, well, I can get with the B theory set of time. So compatibilism, essentially. Sure. Yeah, I'm down with that.
No compatibilism.
Well, if it's a B series, then all things are, and it negates any type of
It negates
linearity.
It negates the existence of any possibility. Almost
Of any possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It negates. Oh my!
I wonder how many
Don't
people...
make me do it. I can't do it. I don't want to break out the swords and go
Bring out
into
the
it. I
swords.
don't want to do
Do you
it.
assert the omni properties of the initial cause?
Oh God.
So, do you affirm the omni properties of this initial cause?
Do I affirm the omni properties of what?
The primary cause.
Of the primary cause. And what would those omni properties be of the primary cause? Which is an
Omniscience,
assumption.
omnipotence, omnipresence.
Right. No, I don't believe in a primary cause. So no, I would have to deny that.
Okay, so can we reason from a position of if a primary cause were existence?
Do you believe in a prime mover?
I can build a framework from the assumptions that could be.
So plausibility? Okay, we'll go with it. So sure, let's assume it. Now what?
So with the series of assumptions that God is triune in its existence, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, time from your perspective would exist in totality simultaneously. All events, past, present, and future, would exist in a singular static state, which would require only the actualization, and no possibility could exist within the set.
And how do you define possibility?
So say that I'm a theist and you're not. If the possibility were capable of actualizing that an individual could exist within the set that does not believe in a way that I believe and believes in a way that is unique to their own perception, it must actualize. And in the actualization serves as a reference point to affirm the omniscience of that being.
But that doesn't give any definition to possibility. You've just baked it
cannot
in.
be possibility, right? There's only actualization from there. No, not necessarily. Like you have, like it's by a matter of perspective. You experience time as it actualizes before you. God, this being's perspective would be of time statically. Like you don't know the future, so it doesn't matter. Whether it knows the future is inconsequential. You don't.
Sure. So I get it. So here's the problem. What you've done is you've said eternity has a limit, which it literally doesn't.
No, set theory affirms it, yes.
Set theory affirms that there's a limit to eternity?
Yeah, you can have two finite point states with an infinite amount of points in between them.
And then you can also have a set where there's an infinitude within that set. We call it Cantor's paradox, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So an infinite amount of sets of an infinite amount of sets creates a paradox where both extremes exist. So here we go in terms of the point of possibility in and of itself. And the possibility would be not that there is no end. If there is no end, then what we're talking about from the perspective of linear beings that are perceiving, there is only potential.
By a matter of perspective, yes.
But by a matter of fact, even if all things that are would still just be a actuality / potentiality simultaneously.
No,
it wouldn't be one or the other.
There's no alternate outcome that could actualize. That which actualizes is required to actualize. There is no
for there to be, but you used a word, you said alternate. That would assume that there's a primary. There couldn't be a primary.
Yeah,
there couldn't be a primary given a B series of time, could there? Because all of them are equal.
So in abstraction, you can conceive that possibility or alternates could exist, but it only exists.
Alternate to what?
Just actualize.
Alternate to what?
Whatever proposition is being placed forth, whatever causal event is taking place. And
for whom?
Then the
for
alternate
whom?
only presents itself post hoc.
To whom?
To the observer.
Notice that, right, the observer. So what you've done is you place the observer into a fixed set, and you've said that this set is a primary set. And so in order for there to be an alternative, there has to be a primary, which would then negate the very premise of all points existing simultaneously and being equal. Wouldn't it? Yes. Unless you're saying, if I say this is alternative music, you would say alternative to what?
Other music.
Right. So that means that if it's alternative in terms of possibility, then there would have to be a primary that we're looking from in order for there to be some alternative to. But if we're looking at it from the perspective of a B series of time, all actualities